Chapter 331. Wuming and Cuculin fought fiercely, but Wuming was gradually losing ground. "Not bad, you guy," Wuming said provocatively, and then suddenly separated from Castor. "Well, after all, this is also a Loon Rune trick. Don't say I cheated, brother." Cuculin waved his flaming staff a few times and looked at Wuming proudly. "Yes, using the Loon Rune to strengthen his weapon, and then using the Loon Rune to increase his dexterity to a speed comparable to Wuming's. Cuculin could be said to be suppressing Wuming. After all, the attributes brought by the assassin rank are still too weak, especially in a frontal battle," Wuming said helplessly as he swung the dagger in his hand. Same here, same here. How nice would it be if I could use a gun right now? Compared to magic, I still prefer using a gun." Cuculin looked at Wuming with a wicked smile. "In that case, don't blame me for cheating, Cuculin." Wuming smiled, and the two daggers in his hands disappeared. Then a black ripple opened beside Wuming, and in an instant, Wuming inserted his hand into it. "Black ripple? Is this me?" Wuming had the same teacher, so Cuculin naturally knew him very well. Silence had a portable space made of Loon runes, and almost all of his treasures were stored in this space. This was a story passed down in Ireland. Many people didn't know the details, but Cuculin knew that if he was willing to work hard, the so-called Loon rune space could be created. "Yes, this is the space where my treasures are stored, and I can use the weapons inside." Saying so, a smile appeared on his face, but Cuculin felt that this smile was ridiculing him. Whoosh! Wuming pulled out a long spear from the black ripples. The long spear made swishing sounds in the air. "The spear of the world tree, I knew it." Cuculin secretly smacked his lips with a I-should-have-known look on his face. "Don't say that I cheated. This is the benefit of the undead." That's right. Wuming had taken out the spear of the world tree, Yggdrasil. Wuming meant that the undead could create a clone and turn it into a servant, and it would not restrict itself according to the rank. TSK, wouldn't that make you a lancer with an assassin rank? Cuculin protested. That was right. This was also the reason why Wuming insisted on keeping the Dragonist relic. All of his weapons and items were inside. This is not the case. My ability value is still assassin's ability value. My skills and relics are also assassins. At best, I can only say that I am an assassin with a long spear. Wuming was not wrong. At this moment, Wuming's ability value, skills, and relics were all assassin Jack the Rippers. "Well, take this, Castor." With Wuming's shout, the white dragon spear swept towards Cuculin. "Damn it, don't underestimate me. This is part of the fun." Cuculin was not angry. Instead, he was delighted. He waved his flaming staff and met the swimming dragon spear. At this time, countless explosions were heard, and a storm caused by the explosions stopped both of them. While Cuculin and Wuming were fighting, Rider, Lancer, and Berserker were fighting. At this moment, Rider was standing on a small giant elephant. Countless skeletons poured out of the ground and swept towards Lancer and Berserker. After all, Berserker was not rational. Even if his attributes were quite good, Berserker only cared about the countless skeletons in front of him. However, each of the skeletons could be restored after being broken apart. Rider stood on the giant bone elephant, looked at Berserker indifferently, shook his head, and then looked at Lancer. After all, Lancer was also unable to fight against four hands with two fists. In the face of the skeleton army that appeared almost all the time, Lancer was also barely able to resist. Inosaka residence. As Inosaka residence was not far from the beach, Toshimi Inosaka did not need to go there. Instead, he released his familiar to watch Rider's battle on the beach at home. Yin Fengqi stood respectfully beside Toshimi Inosaka and also released his familiar to observe. "Chili, you have a lot of doubts, right?" Toshimi Inosaka asked elegantly. "Yes, sensei. That king is also here. Are you so assured to let Rider cause trouble?" Yin Fengqi said. "That is a king. He has self-respect. Don't worry, Chili. If anything happens, I will use the command spell to summon Rider back. Also, don't underestimate Rider. He is an existence that can be compared to the Conqueror King. Although he is not Archer's opponent, the Holy Grail War is not only a test of servants, but also a battle between magicians. Yin Fengshi in Osaka understood Tashimi in Osaka's words. Then, Sensei, I will go and prepare. How about it? Yin Fengshi in Osaka asked respectfully. Okay, go. Yin Fengshi in Osaka nodded and left. After Yin Fengshi in Osaka left, Tashimi in Osaka's face was gloomy. The reason he let Ryder go was because Ryder was almost abandoned by Tashimi in Osaka. After all, in front of the king, all servants were ants. The only way was to make a move on the master. I want to see who can summon him before me. I, Tashimi in Osaka, will not be merciful to such a nameless person. However, if Tashimi in Osaka knew that Archer's master was assassin, who knows how happy he would be back on the battlefield? Ryder looked at Lancer. In his perception, all the soldiers that were hit by Lancer were unable to recover. A weapon that can restrain immortality? Ryder looked at Lancer's scythe and said, his soldiers all had strong immortality and indestructibility. The only disadvantage was that they could be restrained by weapons or attributes that could restrain immortality. It seems that you're not a simple person, Lancer. Ryder commented, but don't think that my soldiers are too simple. With that said, the soldiers that attacked Lancer began to change. All the soldiers that were about to be hit by Lancer's scythe split themselves along the incision of the scythe and then instantly reformed. Lancer's scythe went through them. Lancer was shocked by the strange scene and was attacked by the reorganized soldiers. Bang! Lancer was heavily hit and flew out. Every soldier was the best of the best. Their strength was generally at the strength of a C class, and some had even reached B class. Lancer quickly got up and rubbed his stomach. He looked at the soldiers that had surrounded him with a complicated expression. Then, all of you will turn into stone, Lancer said faintly. He then put his hand on his hat and was about to take off his hood. At this time, countless explosions were heard. Ryder and Lancer both looked at the place where the explosions occurred. Berserker was the only one who was still attacking the skeleton soldiers. Chapter 332. Artoria and Gilgamesh were glaring at each other. Even when the others had started fighting, they were still glaring at each other. How vile. This king thought you were a clown. I didn't expect you to be a thief. Do you really want to steal this king's possession, teacher, so badly? Gilgamesh said arrogantly. I don't know where you got that conclusion from, but he's my possession. This will never change. You, on the other hand, are a king. Don't you dare tell me your real name. Artoria sneered at Gilgamesh. Oof. You call yourself king in front of this king. You want to steal this king's possession in front of him. You don't know this king's name in front of this king. You don't deserve to live anymore, Saber. Gilgamesh waved his hand, and several golden ripples appeared behind Gilgamesh. A few relics extended and attacked Artoria. However, bam, 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 bam. Artoria swung the blackened Excalibur and deflected the treasures that were flying toward her. Are they all relics? No wonder you dare to talk nonsense here. Artoria looked at the weapons that were deflected to the side and said in shock, now you know how powerful this king is. However, this won't change your death. Saber, disappear under my attack. Gilgamesh waved his hand again. This time, dozens of golden ripples appeared behind Gilgamesh. Dozens of relics were flying toward Artoria. How ridiculous! Archer, do you think you could defeat me with just this? Artoria raised her holy sword, and countless magic power gathered on the sword. It looked like she was going to release a relic, but Gilgamesh didn't think so. In the blink of an eye, a huge black magic sword was formed. Artoria raised the black magic sword and swung it lightly. The treasures that were flying towards Artoria were all knocked away. You condensed your noble relic on the sword and didn't use it? Well done, Saber. It would be too boring if you just left like that. Gilgamesh could tell the truth about the mana greatsword at a glance. When Wu Ming used his sword, he liked to condense his relic on his sword and not release it. He used it as a giant sword. Well, Artoria learned it from Wu Ming. However, Gilgamesh knew that it was Wu Ming's trick. Therefore, he was even more annoyed when Artoria said that she was his possession. Didn't that prove that they were related? Artoria, on the other hand, did not respond to Gilgamesh's compliment. If that's all you've got, I advise you to return to the Valhalla as soon as possible. In the face of Artoria's ridicule, Gilgamesh was already annoyed by the relationship between Wuming and Artoria. Like a fuse, Gilgamesh was furious again. Very well, thief, you've completely angered me. Gilgamesh waved his hands, and his huge chest swayed, which made Artoria a little annoyed. In an instant, countless golden ripples appeared behind Gilgamesh. If one really wanted to count, there were at least hundreds of them. Go to hell, mongrel! Hundreds of relics that were gray-bee and above bombarded Artoria's place. As the name implied, the beach of Winterwood City was destroyed. The bombardment also affected the other servants. Wuming, Cuchulainn, Ryder, and Lancer all stopped what they were doing and looked over. These are all treasures. As a king, Ryder could naturally recognize the objects that were being bombarded indiscriminately. Lancer did not speak, but took the opportunity to jump back nimbly, widening the distance between him and Ryder, and then left directly. If the 7 servants really fought, Sakura Madu might be affected. Lancer thought so and decided to retreat first. Ryder did not want to stop Lancer from leaving. He just glanced at Sakura Madu's place and no longer paid attention to it. He, who had summoned countless soldiers, had already found Sakura Madu's position. However, due to his dignity as a king, Ryder did not attack Sakura Madu. My king, retreat first. There's no need to show your cards here. Tashiomi Inosaka's voice came into Ryder's ears. Yes, I know. Then, the soldiers and the giant elephant beside Ryder sank into the ground and disappeared. Ryder, on the other hand, turned into a spirit and left. On the other side, let Berserker retreat. Amiya Kiritsu said to Kuyumemi on the other side of the communicator. Yes, Kiritsugu. Later, Berserker, who was preparing to attack Gilgamesh because he could not find the target, stopped and jumped away from the beach. On the other side of Wuming. Caster, it's time to retreat. Kenneth's voice came. Yes, I'll go now, master. Cuchulainn said rather unhappily. That's not like you. Wuming looked at Cuchulainn. I can't help it. I'm a caster now. Compared to fighting, I want to guide my master to the right path. Cuchulainn smiled. After becoming a caster, Cuchulainn's fighting heart also calmed down. If he did not meet Wuming, he was afraid that Cuchulainn would really fight as a caster. But listening to your voice, your master is not the kind of guy who can be guided by you. Wuming didn't attack, but put the gun in his hand into the black ripples. Well, you're right, but since master asked me to leave, then that's it. Next time, let's fight to the death. After saying that, Cuchulainn turned into a spirit and left. The reason why Wuming didn't fight with Cuchulainn was not that he didn't want to continue to fight with Cuchulainn, nor was it that the gunman's mind was in a mess. It was because Artoria and Gilgamesh were both disciples that Wuming cared about. Wuming wouldn't allow them to kill each other. Thinking so, Wuming went to the place where the explosion had already ended and produced countless smoke and dust. At this moment, Artoria, who was in the center of the explosion, was wrapped in a large amount of black magic fog, as if she was a servant incarnate. Enough magic turned into a magic fog to offset Gilgamesh's noble phantasms. Then, Artoria waved the Excalibur, and a huge magic impact dispersed the smoke and dust caused by the explosion. You're quite capable, Saber. You formed a magic defense to offset the explosion caused by my noble phantasms. Although Gilgamesh said so, he was already wary of Artoria. How much magic did she have to be able to defend against the explosion of so many noble phantasms? Anyway, Gilgamesh knew that it was impossible for him to do it. The magic required was too great, unless he had the Holy Grail. Since your attack is over, it's my turn, Artoria said, raising the Excalibur in her hand, and more magic gathered on the holy sword than before. Is this guy's magic infinite? Gilgamesh frowned. Then, the golden ripples behind him opened. However, this time, what appeared in the golden ripples was no longer a weapon, but a defensive gear. At this time, 2 chains suddenly appeared behind Gilgamesh and Artoria, entangling them. Okay, enough is enough. Wuming's voice came. Chapter 333. A black ripple appeared behind Artoria and Gilgamesh, and the chains came out from it. On the other side, Wuming grabbed 2 chains with one hand, and the chains went into the black ripple. It was the fake Enkidu from Wuming's Dragonist. Wuming, who appeared as an assassin, did not bring Enkidu with him. Although the fake Enkidu was not as good as the real Enkidu, it could still play a certain role. Artoria put away the sacred sword, and Gilgamesh put away the gate of Babylon, which was the best proof. Tisk, Gilgamesh looked at the chains that were tightly wrapped around him and said in a displeased tone. Of course, she could tell that this was her friend's avatar, and it was fake. Gilgamesh hated fake avatars the most. Artoria, on the other hand, did not say anything. This fake chain was made with the original Enkidu, so it only kept its special attack mode against divinity, which was why Gilgamesh was wrapped around by the chain. Artoria, on the other hand, had the red dragon blood in her veins. The chain was nothing more than a sturdy chain. Wuming walked between the two and looked at them. Sit down and talk. After all, both of you are my disciples. As soon as Wuming said that, Artoria and Gilgamesh were shocked and looked at each other in disbelief. Wuming, who had almost guessed the result, could only smile awkwardly. The next day, in the small mansion that Wuming bought, Gilgamesh was sitting on his personal chair, looking angry, while Wuming was reading the newspaper in a relaxed manner. A natural gas explosion near the beach in Winterwood City. Why is it always a natural gas explosion? Wuming laughed. At the same time, Wuming looked at Gilgamesh. Since Gilgamesh came back yesterday, Gilgamesh had been throwing tantrum. Well, a girl throwing a tantrum. If the male version of Gilgamesh was here, Wuming would have slapped him a long time ago. Therefore, girls needed to be coaxed, even if they were his disciples. Is Gilgamesh still angry? Wuming asked softly. Gilgamesh did not say anything. He crossed his arms and closed his eyes. But Wuming could understand. First, he hid the fact that Artoria was Wuming's disciple, deceit. Then he used Gilgamesh's friend against Gilgamesh, insult, and even defended Artoria from Gilgamesh's point of view. All kinds of signs caused Gilgamesh to be angry, which was understandable. I didn't mean to hide it deliberately. After all, I have experienced too many things. If you told me everything, I would be very busy. As Gilgamesh's teacher, Wuming could naturally see what Gilgamesh was upset about. Then, Wuming continued. And the reason why you used Enkidu was because you were too disobedient. Wuming suddenly became strict. Gilgamesh was slightly moved, but he still kept silent. Only his eyes opened. Do you remember our purpose? It's not the Holy Grail War, but to investigate the source of the black mud. It's not wrong for you to blindly go to war with the servants, but there must be a limit to everything. You are easily angered. Wuming gently taught Gilgamesh, as if they had returned to the past. As for letting Artoria go, that's because Artoria must be related to our target this time. You know, we should cast a long line to catch a big fish. Wuming advised earnestly, hoping that Gilgamesh could accept it. Humph. Even so, it can't make this king calm down. Although Gilgamesh said that, Wuming, who knew her well, knew that her anger had mostly dissipated. A Uruk Hyunryong feast. Wuming said the name of a set of dishes. Because Wuming was a good cook in Uruk, the set of dishes was once famous in Uruk and even in Babylonia. Therefore, almost everyone who tasted it said that if they could eat it again, they would dare to go to hell, which was enough to show Wuming's superb cooking. Gilgamesh swallowed, thought for a moment, and said, Deal. Wuming showed a victorious smile. Yuanzong Mountain. Wuming came here and was ready to check the Great Holy Grail again. Is there another source of the black mud? Walking on the way to the Great Holy Grail, Wuming thought. After all, the black mud inside the Great Holy Grail was the evil of this world. And as long as there were humans, there was still a source of evil. Then the evil of this world would not go extinct. It could be said that as long as humans existed, the evil of this world would not go extinct. But I always have a bad feeling. When he came to the innermost part of the Great Holy Grail, Wuming saw a figure. Artoria? Yes, Wuming saw Artoria. Artoria was wearing black armor, Her hands were on the sword inserted in the ground, as if waiting for something. "What's going on?" "Artoria." Wuming frowned and asked Artoria. However, Artoria did not speak. She just opened her closed eyes and looked at Wuming with her golden eyes full of severity and tyranny. "Ah, I didn't expect you to find this place, assassin." Suddenly, a man's voice came from the nearby shadow. Hearing this voice, Wuming's heart was filled with a sense of crisis. This feeling, Wuming instantly took out the meteor silver and looked at the shadow with 200% vigilance. "It seems that you're not an ordinary servant. I'm afraid that Jack the Ripper isn't your real name." A young man with a green top hat, a green coat, and a gentle smile, who looked less than 30 years old, came out from the shadow. Although he was smiling, Wuming could feel the filth in his body. Wuming did not ask, "Who are you?" or anything like that. It was obvious that he was an enemy that would not rest until one of them was dead. With his class agility, Wuming instantly rushed in front of the tall hat man, and Wuming raised his sword and was about to slash down. However, when Wuming's sword was still a little bit away from the tall hat man, Wuming's sword was bounced off. Clang! Wuming looked at Artoria, who used her black holy sword to bounce off his sword, and quickly retreated. He quickly opened up the distance between them. Artoria put down her holy sword and stood in front of the tall hat man to protect him. This made Wuming could not help but frown. "Although I don't know why you're so hostile to me, but it seems that I also hate you, assassin." The tall hat man continued to smile as if nothing had happened. "Let me introduce myself first. I am Rafe Lionel Florence. Nice to meet you, assassin." Chapter 334. Rafe Lionel Florence. Wuming murmured the name softly. Florence? The 72 demon gods. Wuming pondered carefully. Was it related to Solomon, or was it just a coincidence? To be honest, I don't want to have anything to do with you. I'm just here to follow the orders of our king. Rafe spread out his hands, showing that he didn't want to fight. But your goal is to destroy the world, right? As long as you have such a goal, you are destined to be my enemy. Wuming raised the meteor silver with one hand and pointed it at Wuming. "Ha ha ha, you're right. I can't wait to kill you, assassin." Rafe laughed and looked at Wuming with a twisted face. "Go, Saber," Rafe ordered, and Artoria rushed toward Wuming. Wuming frowned and raised his sword toward Artoria. Wuming was wondering why Artoria became like this, but it seemed that it was because of this guy named Rafe. Bang, bang, bang. Wuming was knocked away by Artoria's attack. Artoria was a saber, and her attributes were much higher than Wuming's assassin. It could be said that Wuming had never felt so weak before. Artoria didn't chase after Wuming after knocking him away. Wuming steadied himself and didn't rush to fight Artoria. Instead, he looked at Rafe, who was behind Artoria. "It seems that you are Saber's master. I'm afraid that her original master has already been killed by you." Rafe laughed when he heard Wuming's words. "As expected of you. I knew it. You can't be an ordinary person if you make me feel like I have to kill you." Rafe covered his face with one hand, and his voice came from under his palm. Then, Lev removed his hand from his face and looked at Wuming with his twisted eyes. "You're right. I've already taken back Saber's master." "Recycling?" Wuming was a little puzzled, but he did not show it on his face. Lev did not know what Wuming was thinking, nor did he want to know. Instead, he pointed at Artoria. Instantly, Artoria's heart began to glow. A cup could be vaguely seen in her heart. "That is the Holy Grail." Wuming was shocked. There was indeed the Holy Grail in Artoria's heart. Wuming could tell that the Grail in Artoria's heart was complete, which meant that the Grail in the Winterwood Cavern had been inserted into Artoria's heart by Leviticus. Wuming hurriedly asked Kalis to check the Holy Grail in the Yuanzong Mountain Cavern. Without a doubt, the Holy Grail had disappeared. Although he did not know how Lev inserted the Holy Grail into Artoria's heart, there was no doubt that the Holy Grail in Artoria's heart was indeed the Holy Grail. This also explained why Artoria had turned dark. Her heart was filled with the evils of the world, so there was no need to mention her entire being. And no wonder Artoria had almost unlimited magic power. It turned out that the Holy Grail was supporting her. And from Lev's words, it seemed that Artoria's master was the Holy Grail. Wu Ming thought of Mayu, Ilya, and Blackie, which undoubtedly annoyed Wu Ming. Yes, I gave the Holy Grail to Saber as a trade. Saber will listen to me. What a perfect trade. Lev sighed like a bard. Then, Lev began to speak again. It's so sad, assassin. I was just going to stay here for a while and leave after completing the task given to me by the king. But you came in without permission. Lev looked at Wu Ming fiercely. If that's the case, then you can go to hell, assassin. With that said, magic power gathered in Lev's hand, and the Holy Grail in Artoria's heart began to glow. Don't even think about it. Although Wu Ming did not know what Lev wanted to do, he would not just stand by and watch. However, Saber, release your noble phantasm. Sure enough, Lev was also a smart person. He directly ordered Artoria to release her noble phantasm. Although Wu Ming did not know whether Artoria was forced to obey Lev's order or not, he was sure that Artoria listened to Lev and began to condense her noble phantasm. Excalibur. Artoria raised the holy sword high, and countless magic power flowed from the fantasy breed's heart into the holy sword. The black light expanded greatly, and then Artoria slashed at Wu Ming. Wu Ming looked at the black light in front of him, and a sentence popped up in his heart. Does this count as being chopped? Dong. A loud noise came from inside Yuzong Mountain, and a black light broke out from inside Yuzong Mountain. The black light was enough to cause a disturbance in Winterwood City, but now it did not cause any disturbance. In the midst of the ruins, Wu Ming struggled to reach out a hand that was wearing a black sleeve. Crash! As the owner of the hand pushed away the rubble, there was a faint sound. Wu Ming's figure squeezed out of the rubble in a sorry state, and he shook his head. It hurts. I almost went back to my roots. Wu Ming sat on the rubble in a sorry state, and he held his head in pain. Master, if you did not activate the inherent barrier at the critical moment with your current attributes, I'm afraid you would have returned to your original body, Kalis, who was on Wu Ming's head, said. Although Wu Ming's body was quite broken, the top hat had always been clean. Well, after all, who knew that Artoria could release her noble phantasm in an instant? Wu Ming laughed. That was right. Logically speaking, the light cannon noble phantasm needed a short time to charge, and without charging, the power of the light cannon noble phantasm was not enough to be compared with a noble phantasm. As for Artoria's instantaneous noble phantasm, it should be a convenience given to her by the great Holy Grail. Fortunately, Jack's noble phantasm is useful, or else I would be dead. The moment Artoria released her noble phantasm, Wu Ming activated the inherent barrier, Dark Mist. Although he succeeded in pulling himself into the inherent barrier, he was still sent flying by Artoria. Therefore, even though Wu Ming looked rather wretched, his foundation was not damaged much. After using magic to repair his body, Wu Ming began to pay attention to his surroundings. Looking at the burning streets around him, Wu Ming frowned. I remember that I was sent flying in the direction of Winterwood City, and the burning here does not seem to be caused by me falling. Wu Ming looked at the burning Dongmu City and felt a sense of uneasiness as he felt the extremely turbid aura. Then, Wu Ming jumped onto a tall building that was almost completely burnt. Looking around, the entire Winterwood City had turned into a sea of fire. Chapter 335. Bang! Wu Ming casually sent a skeleton soldier that emerged from the shadows of the building flying. He continued to investigate the surrounding situation. So far, there are no ordinary people in the entire Winterwood City. Did they disappear into thin air, or were they taken away? Although there were traces of blood and corpses, Wu Ming checked them and found that they were magicians, not ordinary people. Wu Ming stopped and did not continue to walk. Everywhere is full of the smell of the black root mud, as if it has been soaked in it. Wu Ming said in annoyance, No matter what, let's go home and Gil first. Wu Ming was worried about Gil. After all, the city was now empty, only some skeleton soldiers and ghosts. Maybe the other 6 servants besides Wu Ming also disappeared. Therefore, Winterwood City was full of contaminated magic. Wu Ming could not detect the changes in the magic of Winterwood City. That is to say, if there was a battle, Wu Ming could only hear it through his eyes and ears. Just like now, what the hell is going on here? A girl's cry for help came. There's still people alive? Wu Ming's eyes lit up. Let's go and see. With that, Wu Ming disappeared. On the other side, a white-haired girl was running angrily, and behind her was a group of skeleton soldiers. That's right, a group. This made Wu Ming, who came here, could not help but blink. Is this guy's luck? That's right, although there were a lot of skeleton soldiers, Wu Ming basically encountered the scattered skeleton soldiers in the shadows of some tall buildings. Did the skeleton soldiers know how to hunt the weak together? Thinking like this, Wu Ming walked toward the girl, and his hands did not stop moving. The girl did not seem to notice the arrival of Wu Ming. She was an assassin, and continued to run. However, as often happens in melodramatic plots, the girl tripped. Damn it, don't underestimate me. I'm the master of animus. As if going crazy, the girl raised her hands. Of course, she was not surrendering, but she was going to use magic to attack. Gandra, the white-haired girl, raised one of her hands and extended her index finger. She then placed her other hand on the hand that had extended her index finger, and a magic array appeared in front of her index finger. A yellow magic bullet shot from the magic circle and hit a skeleton soldier, and the skeleton soldier disappeared in an instant. Is it a Nordic curse magic? Wu Ming said calmly. This kind of magic was originally a curse that could reduce people's physical ability. If it was serious, it could even kill people, but if there was enough magic power, it could also turn it into a magic bullet. This girl seemed to be a first-class magician. However, for the skeleton soldiers, it was not enough to make them feel the danger. The rest of the skeleton soldiers rushed toward the white-haired girl. Don't underestimate me. The girl continued to shoot Gander, but it could only kill a few skeleton soldiers. At this time, the girl found that there was a skeleton soldier on the electric pole behind her. The girl turned her head and looked at the demonic skeleton. Gander. The girl panicked and shot magic bullets at the skeleton soldier. But because of the panic, the magic bullets fired by the girl were a little off target, and the skeleton soldier dodged them easily. Facing the skeleton soldiers that fell from the sky, the girl was completely panicked. The girl held her head in fear and closed her eyes in despair. Someone save me. Lev. Klala. Accompanied by the sound of something falling to the ground, the girl found that the expected attack did not come, and even the sound of the skeleton soldiers in front of her disappeared. The girl slowly opened her eyes and looked at the skeleton soldier behind her. She saw that the skeleton soldier that had just attacked the girl had been divided into 13 pieces like a work of art and scattered on the ground. Then the girl looked at the skeleton soldiers in front of her. All of them were still. A young man wearing a black trench coat, a black top hat, and his hands in his pockets slowly walked out of the skeleton soldiers. Kalala. All the skeleton soldiers turned into pieces and scattered on the ground, making a sound. The young girl was startled, and her body shrank back. The young man took off his top hat and made a noble salute to the girl. Although I'm sorry, I'm not the Lev you want, but I can still save you, lady. The girl looked at the young man in front of her blankly and did not speak. On the other side, Cuculin and a rather naked man were fighting. The man wielded a spiral sword and attacked Cuculin, who was holding a magic staff, repeatedly. What's wrong, Cuculin? Can't you fight after becoming a caster? The man continued to attack Cuculin with a smile on his face. Damn it, since you're mocking me, then take this, Fergus. Cuculin smiled bitterly, then pointed his staff at the man named Fergus. The Loon Rune appeared under the man's feet, and then there was a big explosion. Boom! Cuculin took advantage of the impact of the big explosion to open up the distance and stood firmly in the distance. Whoosh! Fergus waved the spiral sword in his hand, and the smoke caused by the big explosion dissipated. Then he put the spiral sword on his shoulder. You're really worthy of being called a Loon Rune while fighting. You become a caster, your brain is also good. Fergus continued to smile and looked at Cuculin. Well, I'm also a caster. And where did you come from? There are only 7 casters in the Holy Grail War, Fergus Markroy. Cuchulain looked serious. Since Cuchulain and the other 7 casters retreated, the next night, Cuchulain's spirit body stayed in the Winter Wood Hotel. Suddenly, he could not sense his master. Cuchulain quickly looked for his master, but there was no one in the Winter Wood Hotel. Outside the hotel, Cuchulain found that the whole Winterwood city had turned into a sea of fire, and he himself, even without his master, felt the lack of magic power. There was no doubt that the great Holy Grail had provided him with magic power. Then, Fergus came to the door. I don't remember there being 2 sabers in the Holy Grail War. Where's the Night King? Cuchulain looked at Fergus seriously. Well, I'm not very clear here. I only know that my master used the Holy Grail to re-summon 7 casters and let us kill all the survivors in the city, including the servants. Fergus shrugged and said indifferently, however, it seems that there are not many living people in this city. I sense the aura of a servant, so I came here. I didn't expect it to be you, Cuchulain. Cuchulain was shocked by Fergus' words. Not to mention other things, his master had re-summoned 7 casters, which meant that there were now 14 casters in Winterwood City. Chapter 336. That is to say, now it's a battle royale between 14 servants. No, it should be 7 servants versus 7 servants. Cuchulain laughed maniacally. Well, you're not wrong to say that, but I think it's more like the 7 servants on my side are killing the rest of the servants. Fergus said arrogantly with a smile on his face. Since you're going to leave, I'll tell you, Cuchulain. Fergus said, raising the spiral sword in his hand. Your saber belonged to us from the start, and your berserker was too noisy, so we surrounded him and killed him. But to be honest, he's quite capable. Fergus still had a smile on his face. Cuchulain felt a sense of crisis in his heart, and he quickly began to draw the Loon Rune. If you can resurrect 11 times, I have nothing to say, but you will still be killed by us. The spiral sword began to emit a strange light. Cuchulain, who was familiar with Fergus, knew that it was the precursor of Fergus's noble phantasm. Goodbye, my adopted son and friend, Cuchulain. After that, Fergus waved the shining spiral sword in his hand. Calibo, with the release of the noble phantasm, rainbow-like brilliance covered Cuchulain. Boom! The huge impact brought smoke and dust that covered the sky. So who's next? Fergus said, carrying the released spiral sword and leaving the Winterwood Hotel. When the smoke and dust dissipated, several high-rise buildings, including the Winterwood Hotel, turned into ruins, as if witnessing the end of the hero, Cuchulain, and as if symbolizing the bravery of the hero, Fergus, lying there quietly. On the other side, Wuming and the white-haired girl walked side by side on the burning, abandoned road. The collapse of the Winterwood Hotel and the series of explosions naturally attracted the attention of Wuming and the white-haired girl. Wuming frowned and looked in that direction. Cuchulain, is that you? What happened over there? Assassin, do you know something? The white-haired girl said rather angrily. Maybe it was a fight between servants. Who knows? Wuming shrugged and did not say anything. The white-haired girl resisted the urge to curse and touched the necklace around her neck. She didn't say anything and instead smiled happily. It's time to go, Olga. There's still a long way to go to our destination, Wuming said, walking ahead. Oomph. I got it. Also, I'm your master. Can't you just listen to me for once? The girl named Olga didn't say anything in the end. She obediently followed Wuming and complained. Yes, a master who doesn't have the ability to master. You, assassin. Wuming could not help but smile. After Wuming saved the girl, he generously admitted his identity as the masterless assassin. The girl also told him her name, Olga Marie Animusfia. It sounded like a noble name. Wuming vaguely remembered this surname when he went to the clock tower. In that case, let's work together. Then, he made a suggestion. Wuming meant to let the girl, named Olga Marie, be his temporary master. Of course, this didn't mean that Wuming couldn't do without a master, because Wu-ming was directly summoned by the Great Holy Grail. No, it should be said that Wu-ming's main body was summoned by the Great Holy Grail. In fact, it was Wu-ming's main body that was summoned by the Great Holy Grail. Of course, on the other hand, Wu-ming was not interested in Olga Marie or anything like that. It was because Olga Marie's previous words made Wu-ming quite interested. "Who can save me, Rafe?" At that time, Olga Marie did shout that. And Wu-ming had seen the owner of this name not long ago. Well, and he was tricked. Wu-ming intuitively felt that Olga Marie and Rafe must be related, but Olga Marie didn't look like a big villain. Therefore, Wu-ming was very curious about where Rafe, Olga Marie, and the others came from. There was no doubt that Rafe was not from this world, and Olga Marie was full of puzzles. Wu-ming was a magician who explored the whole Winterwood City. At that time, there was no Olga Marie, and no one entered Winterwood City these days. And the most important thing was that Olga Marie was dead. Yes, Wu-ming could perceive that Olga Marie was a ghost existence, similar to the existence of a servant. But it seemed that Olga Marie didn't know that she was dead, and still thought that she was a human, still alive. For various reasons, Wu-ming proposed to establish a contract with Olga Marie. "I refuse." Of course, Olga Marie, with a sad and angry face, refused Wu-ming. Wu-ming certainly knew why Olga Marie refused, as before Wu-ming and Olga Marie joked that there was no master talent. Olga Marie was a first-class magician, but he didn't know why Olga Marie didn't have a master talent. Not even a little bit. First-class magicians didn't have a master talent, which was undoubtedly interesting. However, who was Wu-ming for this kind of situation? Wu-ming prepared a tool very early. Wu-ming took out a necklace from the black ripples. This was a necklace that Wu-ming made according to the technology of the Yuctamyrenia family. When Wu-ming threw the necklace to Olga Marie and explained the situation, Olga Marie was in a daze for a while, and then happily put on the necklace and established a magic channel with Wu-ming. The necklace had a technique that could connect the wearer and the contract servant. Although it only provided magic and there was no command curse, it could be regarded as half a master. This was the technology of the Yuctamyrenia family to let the cyborgs provide magic to the servants. The cyborgs provided magic. The master managed the servants, gave orders, fought, and used command curses. It could be said that it didn't consume the master's magic at all. In order to establish a master-servant contract with Olga Marie, Wu-ming came up with a stupid way. Only in this way, Wu-ming and Olga Marie didn't completely trust each other. After all, Olga Marie was a magician. She should be cautious, which she did well. And Wu-ming simply wanted to follow Olga Marie. He wasn't in a hurry to know her information. Wu-ming had a hunch that as long as he followed Olga Marie, he would naturally know the information. Therefore, the two didn't exchange information. After that, Wu-ming proposed to go to his stronghold to see the situation. He still had an ally, servant. Because she was unfamiliar with the place, so Olga Marie agreed to follow Wu-ming to his stronghold. As a result, because the small villa that Wu-ming bought was in the east and Wu-ming and Olga Marie's location was in the west, the two of them didn't arrive for a long time. Olga Marie said, "I'm going to die." Then they encountered the collapse of the Winterwood Hotel. Wu-ming didn't want to stir up trouble. After all, his current assassin class, Jack the Ripper, wasn't strong in frontal combat. You probably haven't seen a Jack with a 100% critical strike rate. So he could only kidnap Twinkle and let her be his damage dealer. However, trouble always fell from the sky. Leia. Chapter 337. Leia. Accompanied by an inexplicable roar, a black creature with black smoke all over its body charged out of nowhere. The opponent was undoubtedly a servant. Wu-ming could feel it at such a close distance, and it seemed to be a berserker. What's going on? Isn't berserker Hercules? Wu-ming frowned. Later, Wu-ming observed that berserker seemed to rush out from the collapsed Winterwood Hotel, which meant that the opponent was previously under the hotel. The opponent's whole body was black, and he could tell that it was an African. Wu-ming thought so. However, it was lucky. Leia. The black mass roared and rushed toward Wu-ming. That's right, It rushed toward Wu Ming, ignoring Olga Marie. Wu Ming could feel that the opponent was targeting him. "Olga, hide, it's a servant," Wu Ming said seriously to Olga Marie behind him. Olga Marie quickly found a ruin to hide. Berserker picked up a telephone pole from the side of the road, jumped up, and slammed it toward Wu Ming. Boom! The ground was directly smashed, and large pieces of stone flew up. Whoa! Olga Marie covered her head and hid behind the ruins, whimpering. "Really, what the hell did you do, assassin?" Wu Ming fell behind Berserker, so the attack naturally didn't hit Wu Ming. "It's not my fault. This guy came to me." Wu Ming shrugged. "Leia." Berserker roared and once again raised the blackened telephone pole and smashed it toward Wu Ming. Boom! The ground was smashed again. This guy's agility is at least A rank. Wu Ming frowned. Wu Ming almost couldn't dodge the attack. "But I'm an assassin." If you expect an assassin to fight a berserker, perhaps only the ancestor of the assassin, the legendary First Hassan, could do that. If that's the case, Wu Ming narrowed his eyes. "Leia." Berserker madly rushed toward Wu Ming. With Berserker's current speed, Wu Ming was in danger. The dark mist city. Along with Wu Ming's noble phantasm, countless smoke exploded and engulfed Berserker. Forcing Berserker was forced to stop. The smoke enveloped an area of 100 meters with Wu Ming as the center. Then, the smoke disappeared, revealing Wu Ming's figure and Berserker's disappearance. Olga Marie put out her head when there was no more noise. Did you kill that Berserker?" Olga Marie was in disbelief. The smoke also covered her, so Olga Marie couldn't see anything and couldn't hear anything clearly, so she didn't know what happened. "Of course not. I just trapped that Berserker in an enchantment. Let's go, he'll come out soon." That's right, Jack the Ripper's enchantment, the mist. It was the spirit storm that recreated London in the 19th century. It was also the reason why Jack the Ripper could spread fog and use fog. Enchantment. Enchantment. Olga Marie was obviously shocked. After all, for a magician, an enchantment was the highest level of magic. "Don't be so surprised. My enchantment is cursed. It's not a good thing." Wu Ming shook his head, then took the lead and began to move toward the stronghold. After that, Olga Marie didn't ask any more questions. After all, Olga Marie was just a fake master who provided magic, so she couldn't see the attributes of the servant. "Well, my situation is a bit complicated. I can't explain it in a short time. You can call me Jack or Assassin. After all, we're just partners," Wu Ming said at that time. "Jack, Assassin." Olga Marie thought carefully. "Hey, if you don't follow me, I'm leaving." Wait a minute." After walking for a while, Olga Marie really couldn't walk anymore, so Wu Ming took Olga Marie to a store to settle down. Although most of the buildings were destroyed and burned, there were still some buildings that weren't completely destroyed. Like this small store, there was some edible food in it. "Here," Wu Ming said, throwing a bread to Olga Marie. "This is..." Olga Marie looked at the old goods, slightly nostalgic. "It's still in the packaging, it's still edible." Wu Ming continued to organize the edible food, one by one, putting it into the black ripple. Olga Marie ate in small bites, looking at Wu Ming's black ripple. "Is this an independent space?" Olga Marie asked. "Yes, because I cheated a little. I let the assassin rank have the noble phantoms of other ranks." Wu Ming smiled a little awkwardly. Wait, you can cheat." Olga Marie heard that for the first time. She couldn't stay calm. "Didn't I say, after all, I'm special?" Wu Ming just said to Olga Marie's surprise. Then, after organizing the edible food, Wu Ming walked to the door. "I'll go out and check the situation. You stay here and don't run around." Wu Ming said. "What? You make it sound like I like to run around." Olga Marie retorted Wu Ming, but Wu Ming just pretended not to hear. "I also need to clear my mind. You should go," Olga Marie said in disgust. Wu Ming shrugged and didn't say anything. Wu Ming released his mana, propelling himself to fly up and directly arrived at the roof of a tall building. From the height of this building, he could almost overlook the entire Winterwood City. Standing on the roof, Wu Ming looked at Winterwood City. He could vaguely see that there were battles in Winterwood City, and there were more than one. There weren't many battles that could cause large-scale explosions, and Wuming could vaguely sense a small battle. But it's a bit too much, Wuming said in detail. What Wuming was referring to was naturally the battles in those few places. Assuming that in addition to Silent Noise and Berserker just now, there were still 7 servants, and those large-scale and small-scale battles just now were more than 3 places. It's impossible that there were a few servants who had nothing to do and attacked by themselves. Combined with the extra Berserker, plus Lev's trick on the Holy Grail before Wuming was sent flying, Wuming almost guessed it. The number of servants increased? Is it to chase me or something else? Wuming thought. At this time, Wuming sensed that several servants were coming this way. If these servants didn't change their direction, there was no doubt that they would encounter Olga Marie. The perception of servants was much stronger than humans, and Olga Marie couldn't hide under the eyes of servants. But the servants coming this way just proved Wuming's conjecture. The number of servants increased. Swish! Wuming instantly disappeared from the roof. Chapter 338. On the abandoned and burning street, 2 figures were running. One of the figures was wearing a rather revealing purple tights, and some parts of the body were covered with armor. One of the figures was holding a 2-meter-high shield with a cross on the outside, and the other hand was holding a girl. Needless to say, she was a servant. The girl had short, orange-red hair that was tied into a single ponytail. She wore a simple white top with black straps around her chest and abdomen. There was a black belt around her waist. She wore a short black skirt, black stockings, and white boots. Although it looked like work clothes from somewhere, it looked extremely beautiful on the girl. The girl with short orange hair had 3 red marks on the back of her right hand, which formed a shield. Obviously, she was the master of the girl in purple tights. Next to the 2, a girl in a cloak was carrying a scythe and holding a little girl with black hair at her arms. If Wuming was here, he would know that she was one of the 7 servants on the beach. She used a scythe as a weapon, Lancer of the Tong family. Needless to say, the little girl with short black hair in her arms was the master of Lancer. The 3 petal-like marks on the back of her right hand were the best proof. Matthew, are you okay? The girl with short orange hair asked with concern. She seemed to feel guilty for letting the younger generation carry her. It's okay, Senpai. I am Senpai's servant, and Senpai is my master. The girl named Matthew said and smiled at her master. They're coming. Lancer, who was beside the 2 of them, finished speaking. Suddenly, a sharp arrow was shot towards them. Mashu quickly stopped and raised her shield to block the sharp heart-shaped arrows. Bang, 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 bang. A few steel-like collision sounds came, and Matthew, who was holding the shield, was pushed back a few steps by the huge impact. Are you okay, Matthew? The orange-haired girl asked worriedly, her words vaguely hinting that she was blaming herself for not being able to help. It's okay, Senpai. Please be careful. The opponent is a very powerful servant. Although it was very difficult to resist the attack, Mashu still smiled and said to her master who was protecting her, Matthew's right. Chaldea's instrument shows that there are 2 servants comparable to gods. No, there is no doubt that they are gods near you. Be careful, Matthew, Tachika. A male voice came from a device on the wrist of the girl with short orange hair, who seemed to be called Rika. Although the voice sounded rather unreliable, cough, cough, there was no doubt that he was right. Then, Matthew said to Lancer, Ms. Anna, please help us. I don't want Senpai to leave this place. Matthew and Tachika had seen Anna's ability. From many skeleton soldiers, Anna just waved her sickle and killed all the skeleton soldiers. She was much more powerful than Matthew. The girl called Anna couldn't help but look at her little master. Compared to Anna, she hoped that these people could call her Lancer. Also, if her little master didn't always call Anna's sister, Matthew and others wouldn't know that she was called Anna. Sister Anna. Sakura Madu looked at Anna. But Anna was still hesitant because the enemy this time was, What's wrong, my lovely sister? Are you afraid to attack your own sister? A beautiful voice came from behind them. Everyone looked at the newcomer in panic because they didn't notice her presence until she spoke. But it was obvious that she had been standing there for a long time. "That's right, my lovely sister. Are you afraid to attack your own sister?" However, at this time, Matthew and others also heard a beautiful voice in front of them. Everyone looked to the front again, and a gorgeous purple-haired girl with 2 ponytails appeared in front of them. She was dressed almost exactly the same as the one behind them. The only difference between the two was their clothes and weapons. The girl who came from behind didn't have any weapons in her hands. She only had a gauntlet that protected the back of her hands. Moreover, it was more appropriate to call it an ornament than a gauntlet. It made her hands look more tempting. The girl's clothes were similar to a royal shawl and a low-cut princess dress with a long transparent hem that covered her beautiful legs. A few transparent scars were wrapped around the girl's body, making her look particularly charming. The girl who came from the front held a small bow made of gold in her hand, but there were no arrows. From this, it could be seen that the heart-shaped arrows just now were shot by this girl. The girl didn't have gauntlets on her hands, but a bracelet made of beautiful strings of beads, which made her small hands even more beautiful. In terms of clothes, the girl's clothes were similar to the clothes of the Greek girl next door. It was just a short skirt that went up to the knees, and there was a bow in front of the chest. Other than that, the 2 girls looked exactly the same, and even their temperament was exactly the same. They were like the goddess of love, full of charm, and couldn't help but want to surrender. Fortunately, Matthew and others were all women, and more or less resisted the 2 gods. If they were men, they would probably be lying on the ground, licking the toes of the goddess. "Sister," Anna couldn't help but whisper. The 3 people beside Anna heard what Anna said and were shocked. "Sister?" Matthew looked at Anna in disbelief. "So, Anna, you are also a god?" Tachika looked at Anna in surprise. Anna only made a soft sound and did not say anything else. "How sad, my sister. You haven't told him your real name yet." The girl in the back smiled and looked at Anna with a light tone. "Your master looks too young, and it seems that she can't use the ability of a master." The girl in front covered her mouth and laughed. "So, what should we do now, sister? Will you die with your companions, or rise up and resist us?" The 2 girls finished each other's words as if they were the same person. "Sister, perhaps I was summoned to this era to kill you again." Anna put Sakura Madu down, and Sakura Madu ran into Tachika's arms obediently. Then, Anna picked up the scythe from behind and stood back to back with Matthew, protecting their master behind them. Seeing the scythe pointed at her, the girl in the back smiled happily and painfully. "My poor sister, she has to experience the pain of killing her family again." The girl in front was also the same. The 2 were happy that Anna didn't have to die, but they were sad that their sister had to bear the pain of killing her family. "Since that's the case, I'll end all of you." Suddenly, a ghostly voice came out of nowhere. "Mother of disintegration." Chapter 339. Maria Ripper. After the activation of the relic's true name, a thick fog engulfed everyone. The thick fog reduced everyone's visibility to less than 5 meters. Even Anna's 2 sisters could barely see each other. The girl behind Gadotsi and the rest sensed the danger, as they were of the same rank. She quickly warned her sisters. "Urieli, be careful." However, the girl named Urieli in front of Gadotsi, and the rest was a little dazed as she let out a doubtful voice. A silhouette appeared behind her. It was a black leather windbreaker, a black top hat, and black leather shoes. Everything was black except for the 2 red glows where his eyes were. It was extremely horrifying. "What a pity, Gorgon's goddess. You're really unlucky," said the black silhouette. "After all, I exist for women." The black silhouette revealed his face. It was Wuming. After Wuming finished speaking, Urieli's vision turned black and she fell. "Sister," Anna shouted in worry. She raised her scythe and looked at Wuming with hostility. Wuming hugged the girl who fell and looked at everyone with a smile. Ignoring Anna, who was looking at him with hostility, Wuming looked at the goddess behind Gadotsi and the rest. Then, there's only you, Goddess Stheno. Stheno, Matthew said in surprise. He was obviously shocked by the name. Stheno frowned and immediately turned around to leave. Although she was a goddess, Stheno knew that she did not have much combat power. The reason why the two servants, Anna and Matthew, were forced to flee with their masters was that Matthew was too weak, and Anna did not want to fight with her two sisters, which led to the scene where the four of them were besieged by Stheno and Euryale. Moreover, when Anna picked up her scythe and was ready to fight, Stheno and Euryale were sad that their sister was going to kill her sister again. The two of them knew that if their younger sister were to fight, the two of them would not be a match at all. Moreover, in mythology, Stheno and Euryale were defined as goddesses who had no combat power at all. If they did not appear in the world as servants, Stheno and her sister Euryale would not have any combat power at all. Seeing that Stheno had escaped, Wuming did not rush to chase after her. Instead, he threw Euryale in his arms to Anna. Although Anna was somewhat hostile to Wuming, she would still choose to catch her sister's corpse, even if it was a conspiracy. "Let's leave for a while," said Wuming, turning into smoke and disappearing in front of everyone. Anna, who was holding her sister's corpse, Gadatsi, Matthew, and Sakura Madu were left in a daze. Wuming chased after Stheno at a leisurely pace. It was not because he was arrogant, but because Stheno was now in Wuming's enchantment. That's right. The moment Wuming activated his noble phantasm, he also activated his enchantment, the mist. If Gadatsi and the others were paying attention, they would realize that the environment around them had changed. Besides, the device on Gadatsi's wrist no longer emitted any sound because the mist released by Wuming interfered with the mana connection. Moreover, Wuming had the ability to turn into mist in his enchantment and appear anywhere in an instant, so Wuming was not in a hurry to catch up with Stheno. Sensing the existence of the otherness in his enchantment, Wuming frowned. He hasn't come out yet. However, after sensing the distance between the two of them, Wuming did not bother about him anymore. Instead, he sensed Stheno's location. By the way, even if Stheno was an assassin and also had a level A+ aura concealment, he could not get rid of Wuming. The entire enchantment was filled with mist. As long as there was mist, Wuming could detect it. Therefore, Wuming had already discovered Stheno, who was hiding in the shadows of the alley ahead. After stopping, Wuming walked to the entrance of the alley slowly and looked at the shadows. "Do you want to play hide-and-seek, great goddess?" Wuming smiled as he walked into the alley. When he got close to Stheno, a charming voice was suddenly heard. "Smile of the goddess." Following the activation of the noble phantasm, Wuming stood there motionlessly as if he was frozen. Then, Stheno's figure appeared. "I thought you were a powerful hero, but I didn't expect you to be the same as the others." "A man is a man indeed," Stheno said slowly, as if he had already won. Walking to Wuming, who was standing there in a daze, Stheno raised his head and looked at Wuming. "What beautiful eyes, what a handsome face." "What a pity," Stheno said as if she was intoxicated. "None of the men who had been affected by her charm could survive. To be able to attack us sisters. I thought you were really a man who wasn't tempted by beauty." Stheno smiled, then raised his hand and caressed Wuming's cheek. Suddenly, when Stheno touched Wuming's face, he seemed to have seen something rather shocking. Shock was written all over his face. Slap! Suddenly, a hand grabbed Stheno's arm. Then, a rather frivolous voice was heard. "It's not good to casually invade other people's privacy, great goddess." "What?" Stheno exclaimed in surprise. Looking at the man who grabbed his wrist without any trace of being affected by the charm, Stheno smiled bitterly. "I see. Was that all a disguise? What a cunning man." Wuming only maintained his smile and didn't explain anything. As for the appearance of being affected by the charm just now, that was an act by Wuming. As someone who had seen through Stheno and Euryale's true names, Wuming naturally wouldn't be so rash as to underestimate Stheno. Even if Wuming could take down Euryale without any difficulty, Wuming wouldn't think that Stheno was easy to deal with. After all, no matter how weak and useless the other party was, she was still a goddess. For example, just now, Stheno had only touched Wuming's cheek and seen some information about Wooming. In terms of skills, it should be similar to seeing through true names. As an existence on the same level as them, or even a higher level existence, Wooming said that there was no need to underestimate any god. Gods never lack trump cards. Well, of course, if the difference in strength was too great, he could still underestimate them. Cough, cough. In short, because Wooming realized that the other party was a charming goddess, he originally wanted to use a world-class item to resist Wooming. But after thinking about it, he decided against it. After all, his apostasis was very high, and he had proven before that he was immune to almost all mind control without a world-class item. Therefore, Wooming pretended to be charmed and grabbed Stheno when she approached Wooming. As for whether Stheno, who was caught by Wooming, would escape or not, Wooming already had a plan. Chapter 340. Wooming grabbed Stheno's hand, and a silver chain wrapped around it. Wooming had plenty of pirated Enkidu in his dimension artifact. Cough, cough. Anyway, Stheno couldn't run away. Moreover, after Stheno saw what happened to Wooming, he gave up on the idea of running away. Don't worry, Slime Man. I have no intention of running away, even if you did something terrible to my sister. With a smile on his face, Stheno calmly said something rather strange. Although I know you're saying that I didn't kill Euryale, please don't be so strange. Forget it. Wooming shrugged nonchalantly and let go of Stheno's hand. However, the Enkidu that was connected to Stheno's hand because of Wooming didn't unlock when Wooming let go of Stheno's hand. What? You still don't trust me? Stheno raised the Enkidu on his arm and said unhappily, I'm a goddess. A goddess won't lie to a hero who has captured her. Stheno narrowed his eyes and smiled at Wooming as if he was looking at a delightful toy. Forget about being a hero. I'm not interested in being a hero. I'm just an assassin, at least for now. Wooming shrugged. Wooming's last sentence was to tell Stheno not to expose his identity. He just wanted to be a different kind of assassin. Oh, since the great hero says so, I'll just listen to you. Stheno smiled at Wooming. Let's go. Your Euryale should be awake by now, right? Wooming grabbed Stheno's hand and started walking towards where they came from. As expected of a brave warrior, you actually dared to hold the hand of goddess. However, since you didn't do anything to Euryale, I will forgive your rudeness. Stheno raised his neck like a proud princess. I feel like it's better to get rid of you now. On the way, Wooming began to ask Stheno for information or to verify his speculation. After Wooming told Stheno about his speculation that Lev had resummoned 7 servants, Stheno nodded. As expected of you. That's right. The man in the green hat summoned 7 new servants, including me and Euryale. Stheno walked elegantly, as if Wooming didn't take the initiative to hold her hand, but she took the initiative to hold Stheno's hand. Then, he began to introduce their lineup. I'm an assassin, Euryale is an archer, and Saber is a muscle man. I could tell he's a lecherous guy. His eyes lit up when he saw Euryale and me, and he would try to flirt with us. Stheno frowned. He was rather displeased. Stheno knew how to talk up, tried up, knew how to flirt with. Castor looks like a mature old man. He doesn't talk much. Ryder is a red-haired, muscular man. He seems to be a king, and he has some connection with Zeus. He's quite annoying, and the way Castor looks at Ryder is a bit weird. He's full of passion. Stheno smiled mischievously. Wooming ignored her and continued to listen to Stheno's introduction. Stheno looked at Wooming, who didn't respond. He was not surprised and continued to talk. Berserker was a guy covered in black. I couldn't see his face clearly. However, this guy was always by the other Saber's side. You don't know how excited Berserker was at that time. It looked like he wanted to kill Saber. Wooming thought that the Berserker mentioned by Stheno should be the black Berserker they met before, and the other Saber mentioned by Stheno should be Artoria. Combined with what Stheno said, Wooming now knew why Berserker came straight to him. I'm afraid that Berserker is a Knight of the Round Table, Wooming thought. Although Wooming didn't think that a Knight of the Round Table could become a Berserker, there were exceptions to everything. Like Mordred, with her obsession with Artoria, she was likely to become a Berserker. In the last Holy Grail War, Although Mordred appeared as a saber, her fighting style was as violent as a berserker. But the berserker who attacked Wuming didn't think it was Mordred. Why was Wuming so sure? It felt wrong. Well, that's right, the berserker didn't give Wuming the same feeling as Mordred at all. Wuming was very confident in his intuition and didn't accept any rebuttal. Ahem. After all, even if Mordred became a berserker, she wouldn't have an obsession with Wuming. If it was really Mordred, then Artoria would be very busy right now, and the berserker wouldn't attack Wuming at all. What about Lancer? Wuming shook his head and stopped thinking about it. He asked Stheno. This is also why I put Lancer at the end. Stheno's eyes began to look serious. You must be careful. Lancer is a god. If you really want to call him a demigod, he should have the ability to attack gods. He gave me a very dangerous feeling. Stheno recalled the golden figure he had seen before. It shone like the sun. The other party had a special attack against gods, and with the light of the sun, it was too bad for Stheno, who was a snake. Like the sun, wearing golden armor, holding a long spear. Wuming felt that this person was more familiar the more he thought about it. I hope it's not him, Wuming said softly. If it was really him, Gilgamesh might be in danger. What are you mumbling about? Stheno rolled her eyes at Wuming. Nothing, Wuming said casually. Stheno saw that Wuming was perfunctory and didn't ask anymore. After a few minutes, Wuming began to complain. I was wondering why you ran so far. Wuming looked at Stheno with disdain. They had been walking for a while, and they still hadn't reached where Matthew and the others were. After all, London wasn't small. Ahahaha. Wuming could transform into smoke and move quickly, but Stheno couldn't. If it weren't for you chasing me, I wouldn't have run so far. Stheno looked at Wuming with disdain. So it's my fault. Wuming was helpless. Then unlock this for me, so I can keep up with your speed. Stheno raised her hand, and the silver chain on it glowed faintly. This was the symbol of the Enkidu, which was sealing Stheno's power. I have other reasons for not unlocking it for you. At this time, Wuming was about to explain, but his expression suddenly changed. That guy went over. That guy? Is there anything else in your enchantment? Stheno looked at Wuming in confusion. However, the moment Stheno finished asking, Wuming didn't answer. He picked Stheno up and started sprinting. Wah, what are you doing? You gave me a fright. There's no time to explain. We'll talk later. Just like that, Wuming carried Stheno and a princess carry and sprinted in the direction of Gadatsi and the others. Chapter 341. When Wuming went after Stheno, there were only 4 people left: Gadatsi, Matthew, Anna, and the unconscious Euryale. Gadatsi looked at the direction where Wuming went, then she looked at Matthew. Matthew, is that man also a servant? He's so powerful. Gadatsi was a little excited, and her eyes were shining. Yes, Senpai, the man who went after the enemy is a servant. But strangely, I haven't found his aura. His rank, maybe assassin. After Matthew explained to Gadatsi about Wuming, he wanted to contact their support personnel. But, Doctor, are you there? No matter how Matthew called the device on Gadatsi's hand, no one responded. What's going on? Just when Matthew was puzzled, Gadatsi's panicked voice came. Matthew, look, the environment around us has changed. Hearing Gadatsi's surprised and slightly panicked voice, Matthew also looked around. The surrounding buildings had become European-style buildings, which were completely different from the modern buildings in Winterwood City. Similarly, there was no one around, and there was no trace of life. Because of the fog brought by Wuming, Matthew and Gadatsi didn't notice the change in the surrounding environment at first. If it weren't for Gadatsi's curiosity about the fog, it would have taken Matthew a while to notice the change in the surrounding environment. Matthew walked to a nearby corner and touched the wall. Senpai, this should be a 19th century building. Matthew turned around and looked at Gadatsi. Hey, Matthew, do you know this place? Gadatsi was a little surprised. Yes, I've seen it before. Matthew smiled and nodded. Matthew is really knowledgeable. Gadatsi praised Matthew, which made Matthew blush a little. This fog contains extremely powerful toxins. Ordinary people may die if they stay here for a long time. At this time, Anna suddenly said. Gadotsi and Matthew looked at Anna, who had been holding her sister before. At this time, Anna had already hugged Sakura Madu in her arms and protected Sakura Madu with her cloak. What? Senpai, what do you feel now? Matthew looked at Gadotsi with a little panic. Although it's not that I don't trust Anna, I really don't feel uncomfortable. Gadotsi touched her body and shook her head. Really, Senpai? Matthew still didn't believe it and looked at Gadotsi with concern. Really, Matthew, don't be so nervous. Gadotsi smiled and waved her hand to signal Matthew to calm down. Anasis, actually, I don't feel any discomfort. It's better to say that the air in the fog is very fresh. At this time, Sakura Madu, who was protected in Anna's arms, also spoke. Anna was silent at this time, thinking. Previously, Anna was silent for a while because of her sister's corpse and didn't take care of Sakura Madu, but when she found that her sister was not dead, she felt relieved. At the same time, Anna also discovered the toxins contained in the fog. After that, she quickly protected Sakura Madu. In other words, Sakura Madu was not protected by Anna for a short period of time. Anna and Matthew could stay in the fog for a long time without being hurt, but their masters were also fine. Gadotsi was not affected at all, and Sakura Madu said that the air was very fresh. It's better to be cautious. After all, this is likely to be Assassin's enchantment. Anna was silent for a moment, but she still didn't release Sakura Madu from her cloak. However, after Anna said the word enchantment, Matthew was shocked. Enchantment. After all, Matthew already knew that Anna was also a goddess, so Matthew felt that Anna's words were very credible. Looking at the somewhat surprised Matthew, Gadotsi, who didn't know what an enchantment was puzzled. Matthew, what is that? Enchantment? Gadotsi asked. Senpai, enchantment is a magic that can instantiate one's own scenery. You can think of it as an independent small world. Matthew knew that his master was not a magician, so he explained it in the simplest terms. Independent small world. Is it that powerful? Gadotsi was also surprised. Well, it's called enchantment. It's called the magic closest to magic. It can be said to be the highest level magic. Matthew nodded. The highest level magic? For Gadotsi, she didn't understand the meaning of magic, but the term highest level magic was very useful for Gadotsi. After all, it was the highest level magic. And among magicians with enchantment are quite rare. It seems that Assassin is not an ordinary person. Matthew looked at the direction where Wuming left. The servant over there is right. She is indeed not an ordinary person. A seductive voice sounded, and it was a voice that everyone was familiar with. What's that sound? Gadotsi looked in the direction of Uraili, who was unconscious. As expected, the unconscious Uraili had woken up. She was sitting on the ground in an elegant posture, looking like a young lady. Huh, didn't you say that you were killed by Assassin just now? How did you come back to life? Gadotsi's face was filled with a zombie expression. After all, Gadotsi always thought that Uraili was killed by Wuming. How rude of me, unknown master. Let's not talk about how I'm a goddess. How could I die so easily? Moreover, that guy isn't a cruel person. Why would he kill me? Uraili looked at Gadotsi with disgust, which made Gadotsi feel a little embarrassed. Are you awake, sister? Anna knew that her sister was not dead, so she was not surprised to see Uraili wake up. I'm so sad, my dear sister. Can't you be more gentle with your sister? Uraili said uninterestedly. Anna didn't say anything. She didn't even look at Uraili. You won't be our enemy anymore, right? Matthew said uncertainly. Yes, of course. I've been defeated by that man, and I'm his prisoner now. I won't attack you anymore. Uraili didn't feel like a prisoner at all. She looked at Gadotsi and Matthew playfully. Besides, although Master asked us to kill all living creatures, Stheno and I have no intention of attacking you. We're only chasing you because our sister is here. Sigh. Matthew and Gadotsi were dumbfounded. Hearing this, Gadotsi and Mashu remembered that it was Anna who passed by them at the beginning, and then the two of them began to chase after them. Because of that, Matthew had no choice but to propose a collaboration with Anna. I'm sorry, Anna's expression couldn't be seen, but Matthew and Gadotsi felt that Anna's face was extremely red. Let's not talk about that first. A servant is coming, Yoeli said calmly. Laya dash. Chapter 342. A roar that didn't sound like a human's roar could be heard from the front of Gadotsi and the others. This made Gadotsi, who had just escaped from danger, feel very uneasy. Matthew, who could see his master's uneasiness, raised a shield and stood in front of Gadotsi. It's okay, Senpai. I am Senpai's servant. I will protect Senpai. Looking at Matthew's smiling face, Gadotsi's fear was swept away. Thank you, Matthew. Gadotsi smiled at Matthew. It's coming, Yoeli reminded. At the same time, a hostile servant appeared in front of Matthew and the others. Because of the interference of the fog, Matthew, who had just become a servant, a dime servant, was obviously not like Yoeli and Anna. His perception of danger was also a level lower. Anna had already let go of Sakura Madu and raised her scythe at the source of the danger. Sakura Madu also ran to Gadotsi's side and was hugged by Gadotsi. After all, Sakura Madu was still a little girl, and she was very likable. Gadotsi naturally would not reject Sakura Madu, so she picked her up. Leia. As the roar approached, the owner of the roar appeared in front of Gadotsi and the others. The black fog and the full body armor made it impossible to see the person's face, but they knew that this was a berserker. It's our berserker. Yoeli knew that the berserker would not distinguish between friend and foe, but she still said calmly. Although Matthew was very confused about what Yoeli meant by our side, now was not the time to ask questions. Sister, can you fight with us? Anna looked at Yoeli, who was sitting on the ground in an elegant posture. Of course, Mashu and Gadotsi also agreed to the idea of increasing their combat power. No, Yoeli said straightforwardly. Looking at Matthew and Gadotsi, who immediately showed regret, Yoeli continued. It's not that I don't want to help you, but that man is afraid that I won't be honest, so he has already set a restraint on me. With that said, Yoeli raised her hand with a bracelet. Above this pair of beautiful and charming jade hands, several silver-white chains with golden light were wrapped around it. Chains, Gadotsi said, looking at the silver-white chains in confusion. She didn't notice it before. Matthew was also puzzled. Obviously, neither of them noticed it. Perhaps only Anna, who caught Yoeli before, noticed it. The extraordinarily beautiful chains and the beautiful girl accompanied by her smile made her even more beautiful and seductive. It didn't feel out of place at all, which was why Matthew and Gadotsi didn't notice it. This chain has the ability to restrain the mana and divine power in my body. Also, I was injured by that man's noble artifact earlier, so I don't even have the strength to stand up now. This was also the reason why Yuri and Ellie had been sitting there without standing up. Besides, you can't defeat him alone. Hurry up and run for your lives. After all, Yoeli and the Black Berserker were considered to be on the same side, and he wasn't weak at all. When Anna decided to kill Yoeli and Stheno, the two of them felt that Anna would definitely be able to do it. That was because that was how myths and legends worked. This was how heroic spirit legends worked. The evil dragon was destined to be unable to defeat the dragon slayer, and the pure girl couldn't resist her younger sister who killed and devoured her in order to protect her. That was the tragedy and law of the followers. Therefore, judging from the strength of Anna and Matthew, it was unlikely that they would be able to defeat this berserker. I won't leave. I won't abandon my sister and leave. I'll protect my sister this time. It was ironic that the pursuer no longer chased after them. The rebels who had made up their minds to kill the pursuer changed their mind and chose to protect the pursuer instead. Fate is often so asterisk, 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 asterisk. Get used to it. Us too. Although you've been chasing after us, it was a misunderstanding. Since you're Ms. Anna's sister, we won't abandon you. Gadotsi clenched her fists and looked at Matthew. That's right. I agree with you, Senior. Matthew nodded. It had to be said that Matthew, who had just become a subservient, and Gadotsi, who had just entered the world of magicians, had a very high sense of justice. However, Euryale was helpless against Anna, Matthew, and Gadotsi's opinions. You guys are really... Euryale shook her head helplessly. Then, before Euryale finished her sentence, Anna dashed toward Berserker. Leia! Berserker bellowed at the sight of his enemy charging toward him. He raised the blackened electric pole in his hand and charged toward Anna. Gotta say, Euryale was indeed a goddess. Her analysis was spot on. Anna was indeed no match for Berserker. Bam! In just a single exchange, Anna was sent flying by Berserker. Mashu, Gadotsi saw that his ally was sent flying, so he quickly shouted at Mashu. Yes, Senior. Although the two hadn't known each other for a long time, Matthew and Gadotsi fell in love at first sight. Ahem. They cooperated very well. Matthew naturally understood what Gadotsi meant. In an instant, Matthew dashed toward Berserker with his shield. Berserker didn't know why, but after seeing Mashu, he was stunned and stood there in a daze. Bam! Boom! Berserker was accidentally knocked away by Matthew and fell to the ground with a loud thud. That's right, accidentally. Matthew, Gadotsi, Euryale, and Anna, who was sent flying by Berserker, were also stunned. It couldn't be helped. Such a powerful enemy was sent flying by Matthew's shield bash. Anna wondered how she had been sent flying just now. Matthew, you're so powerful, Gadotsi exclaimed. When they first came to this world, Gadotsi and Matthew only encountered skeletons and the like. However, because Matthew was a servant, it was easy for him to deal with skeletons. Therefore, Gadotsi felt that Matthew was very powerful at that time. Later, when Gadotsi praised Matthew, Matthew said that those skeletons were just weak soldiers. He was actually very weak, but he encountered a weaker opponent. This made Gadotsi feel a little helpless. Although it didn't mean that she hated Matthew, Gadotsi was still a little depressed when she learned the truth. However, there was one sentence that Gadotsi remembered very clearly and was very touched. I am Senior's servant, and I will always protect Senior. Matthew's sentence moved Gadotsi quite a bit. Then, the two fell in love at first sight. Ahem! Their relationship became more harmonious. But now, after seeing Matthew send Berserker, who was very powerful, Anna, flying, Gadotsi wondered if Matthew said that he was weak to make her feel less proud. Then, while everyone was still in a daze, Berserker, who was sent flying, got up again and rushed to Matthew's side. That's right. For some reason, Berserker did not attack Matthew. Instead, he attacked the others. Other than Matthew, the one who was closest to Berserker was Euryale, who could not move freely. Berserker rushed to Euryale and raised the electric pole that had been transformed into a noble artifact. Sister, Anna, who got up again, screamed in shock. Boom! Chapter 343. Boom! The Grade D electric pole relic smashed onto the ground, causing the ground to shatter. However, Euryale was nowhere to be seen on the shattered ground and under the electric pole. Euryale was not sent back to the Martyr's Palace either. Instead, gosh, I almost died, Euryale grumbled. Sister, Anna looked in the direction of the voice. At the same time, Mashu and Gadotsi also looked at him. He saw a man wearing a black windbreaker, black leather shoes, and a black top hat standing on top of a pile of rubble. The man was carrying two identical girls in his arms. They were Stheno, who had escaped, and Euryale, who had almost died under Berserker's baton. It's the mysterious assassin. Gadotsi screamed. The man was Wuming, who had rushed over with Stheno. You took so long to come back, assassin. Euryale sat in Wuming's arms, holding Wuming's neck to keep her balance. She complained to Wuming in a dissatisfied tone. Which family are you from? If I had known earlier, I wouldn't have saved you. One Stheno is enough for me. Wuming said helplessly. How can you blame me for that? You're not a gentleman at all. Just like Euryale, Stheno sat in Wu Ming's other arms. She held Wu Ming's neck to keep her balance while refuting Wu Ming. Wu Ming walked toward Gadatsi with Stheno. Wu Ming noticed Berserker in the enchantment. Berserker was the Berserker who seemed to be one of the knights of the Round Table. When he suddenly encountered Berserker, in order to avoid unnecessary trouble, Wu Ming directly used Jack the Ripper's inherent barrier, the mist, to trap Berserker inside. Wu Ming had used the tactic of trapping the enemy in the enchantment before. Wu Ming had set up a large number of magic formations in the enchantment. After bringing Angelica and Beatrice into the enchantment, Wu Ming retreated. Wu Ming could have chosen not to enter the enchantment, but he had to say a few words to them. Although the caster of the enchantment was neither scientific nor magical, Wu Ming had such an ability. After all, Wu Ming was the root dragon. The adaptability of time and space was reflected here. The enchantment was like a flexible Rubik's Cube in Wu Ming's hand. Wu Ming could arrange the enchantment in various ways. After that, Wu Ming took Olga and Marie away from there and went to a small shop not far away. Wu Ming left some mana in the enchantment, which was enough to support Wu Ming and the others. The enchantment disappeared, and Berserker was released. After that, Wu Ming encountered Gadatsi and the others, as well as Stheno and Euryale who were chasing them. After using his noble phantasm, Maria Ripper, and the enchantment noble phantasm, the Dark Mist, Gadatsi, Stheno, and Euryale were transferred to the enchantment. At that time, Berserker, who was trapped in the Dark Mist, had not been released yet. When Wu Ming chased Stheno, he also checked Berserker's location and found that he was quite far away from Wu Ming, so he was relieved to play with Stheno. But after a while, Berserker seemed to have sensed a trace of aura coming from the barrier, and it began to go berserk. Wu Ming could sense that Berserker was running around in the enchantment. And just when Wu Ming and Stheno were on their way back to Gadatsi and the others, Wu Ming sensed that Berserker was approaching Gadatsi and the others. After all, the Dark Mist was about the size of London City. Although it was not small, it was not that big either. It could only be said that Berserker was very lucky to have found the location of Gadatsi and the others. As expected of Lucky Bee, after Wu Ming sensed all of this, Wu Ming hurriedly carried Stheno and rushed over at full speed. However, Wu Ming was worried that Gadatsi and the others would have an accident, so he directly used his Dragonist item, which he hadn't used for a long time, and rushed over with agility beyond X. Why do you think Wu Ming did not hesitate to cheat to bring his treasure trove? It was because the treasures in the treasure trove were really helpful to Wu Ming, especially Wu Ming, who was an assassin at the moment. The treasures were really helpful. After Wu Ming used an item to speed up his journey, the scene where Wu Ming saved Euryale, who was about to die under the telephone pole, appeared. The reason why Wu Ming did not directly remove the enchantment was that Berserker was not far from them, and he might be attacked by other servants. After all, Wu Ming had verified that Winterwood City had indeed summoned the 7 servants. If he directly removed the enchantment, Berserker would definitely find them. In addition, Berserker did not find Gadatsi and the others in the enchantment, so Wu Ming wanted to meet with Gadatsi and the others to ask something in the enchantment. Obviously, the orange-haired girl and the shield lady were not people of this world. After crossing through time and space, their space-time aura was a bit serious. The reason why Olga Marie did not have the space-time aura was because she was dead. She was just like a servant. She was dead. She was a mass of magic power. She was a spirit. But even so, Wu Ming still suspected that Olga Marie had something to do with Gadatsi and the others. Stheno only complained because Wu Ming's super speed scared the goddess. After all, Wu Ming's agility was beyond EX, and he was comparable to Wu Ming's Phoenix incarnation. However, the item that increased speed was not something that everyone could use. If Olga Marie used it, she would explode in an instant. After all, if her physical fitness was not up to par, she naturally couldn't use it. Take Wu Ming's avatar, for example. In the world of the God's Layers, Wu Ming's original body had descended. Even though he was still in his infancy state, the origin dragon's physical body that had undergone some minor baptisms had become extremely powerful. Wu Ming's incarnation had limitations because Wu Ming still had room to grow. It was estimated that when Wu Ming was fully grown, Wu Ming could use multiple incarnations at will, and their power would also be greatly improved. But if Wu Ming's incarnation was used by his incarnation, the limitations would be quite big. After all, if the strength of the incarnation was not enough, it would be torn apart in an instant. As for Assassin, the reason why Silent Wonder didn't cheat and let the 12 clones follow him was because Silent Wonder couldn't use any of his clones. Even if he could use them, the power was very small. If Wu Ming used them by force, he would die. Therefore, it was really useful to bring Dragonist, a treasure trove that contained a large number of very useful treasures. At that moment, Berserker, who lost his target, began to roar furiously. Leia! Gadatsi and the others realized that the enemy had not been eliminated yet. Chapter 344. Gadatsi, Matthew, and Anna tensed up when they heard Berserker's roar. Wu Ming, Stheno, and Urieli, who were in his arms, weren't nervous at all. Stheno and Urieli were goddesses, so they didn't feel anything from a mere Berserker. Even when Urieli almost died under Berserker's stick, she didn't react at all. She was still chatting happily with Wu Ming and Stheno. Wu Ming, on the other hand, wasn't afraid at all. Wu Ming had been through a lot, so a mere Berserker wasn't enough to scare him. Wu Ming wasn't scared at all. Besides, Wu Ming only used the dark mist to trap Berserker because Olga Marie was there. There were many ways to deal with Berserker, but it would be a waste of time to fight Berserker. After all, this city was filled with danger. Olga Marie might already be in danger outside. Berserker was Wu Ming's half-master, after all. It was better to deal with him as soon as possible. Just as Berserker was about to charge at Wu Ming and the others, especially Wu Ming, Berserker realized that his movements were sluggish, as if he had fallen into a bottomless swamp. Berserker is indeed Berserker. You didn't even notice the trap I set under your feet? Wu Ming shook his head in boredom. At that moment, a few stones around Berserker lit up. Simple and mysterious runes could be seen on the stones. That's right, they were Lune runes. These stones were rune stones. Just like Rin Enbin and Luvia's gem magic, these rune stones had the same effect. Gem magic was to store spells and magic power in gems in advance, and then use them directly when needed. Magicians needed spells and magic power to cast magic, but because the spells and magic power needed to be used were all stored in gems, the use of gem magic was only to release the gems that stored the spells and magic power. Releasing the gems only required a small amount of mana, so gem magic was very practical. However, since the gems used for gem magic were single use, it was mostly used by nobles. Of course, Rin Enbin didn't look like a noble anymore, but she was telling the truth when she said that she was down and out. As for the rune, it was engraved on the stone in advance. When it was used, it only needed to be released. However, the rune was extremely powerful. Although it wasn't in terms of attack, it was extremely powerful in other aspects. Therefore, the stone made of the rune could be said to be extremely precious. At this moment, the stones that trapped Berserker were engraved with large amounts of Lune runes that had the effect of slowing and suppressing. Just one stone was enough to cause an obvious effect. At this moment, dozens of Lune runes lit up around Berserker. These dozens of rune stones formed an intricate magic formation with Berserker in the center. This magic formation was made of dozens of binding Lune runes. It wasn't easy to bind Berserker, who had an A-rank endurance. Of course, if Berserker could move, he would be able to escape from the magic formation. However, Berserker was like a fish on the chopping block. It was impossible for him to escape. What? If one were to ask Wu Ming where the Lune runes engraved on the runestones came from, Wu Ming would say that when he first learned the Lune magic, he would experiment with stones by the roadside. Over time, countless rune stones accumulated. Therefore, Wu Ming chose a portion of the useful rune stones and stored them in his Lune rune space. Of course, Wu-Ming hadn't completed the Loon space at that time, so it was still very small. Therefore, Wu-Ming only stored a small portion of the rune stones and left the rest in the Country of Shadow. After that, Wu-Ming would sometimes create some rune stones when he was free. After all, Wu-Ming knew that there would be a day when he would need them. Just like now, he couldn't release the true name of the relic in his treasure vault, nor could he use the advanced magic of Assassin. Now, he only needed to use a little bit of mana to recreate the Kanzaki magic. One had to know that Silent Cry's mana level was EX. In that case, there was no shortage of mana. Leia. Although Berserker was bound, he still roared unwillingly. Facing the immobile Berserker, Wu-Ming gently placed Stheno and Euryale on the ground and walked towards Berserker. Wu-Ming came before Berserker and took out 18 rune stones from the black space beside him. As expected, you're Lancelot, right? Wu-Ming said softly. When Wu-Ming said Lancelot's name, Berserker suddenly fell silent for a moment, but soon returned to his frenzied state. Wu-Ming smiled with pity. The hero who was known as the Knight of the Lake and the Flower of Knights, who had achieved countless feats and received the blessings of the elves, had actually turned into a monster. What a joke. You've been chasing after me. I'm afraid you're obsessed with me. When Wu-Ming was in Camelot, almost all the knights respected, admired, and worshipped Wu-Ming. However, Lancelot was the only one who could be considered a fanatic. However, Lancelot wasn't loyal to Wu-Ming. As Arthur Artoria's knight, Lancelot had always been exceptionally loyal to her, but he also worshipped Wu-Ming fervently. Although he didn't express it, Wu-Ming could feel it. After Wu-Ming's departure, Lancelot's fanaticism shifted to Guinevere. When Guinevere was tricked by Morgan Le Fay to reveal his love for Wu-Ming and was about to be executed, Lancelot didn't hesitate to save Guinevere and escape from Camelot. However, because of this, Lancelot became the second fuse that affected the fall of Britain after Wu-Ming. Surrounding the incident between Lancelot and Guinevere, the people questioned, the nobles stirred up trouble, and Artoria's power was affected. This was a severe psychological blow to Lancelot. Then Guinevere said, I should be executed. It's not only a release, but also a way to lighten the king's burden. After that, Lancelot sent Guinevere back. After that, Artoria successfully exiled Guinevere and saved his life. Lancelot had always been obsessed with Wu-Ming, which was why he kept chasing after Wu-Ming. Not only that, but turning the electric pole into a noble relic and disguising his appearance were also very similar to Lancelot's experience. Defeating the enemy with a tree branch and completing the heroic feat of hiding his identity. Wu-Ming guessed that these two things could be upgraded to noble relic or skill. All these signs were very clear. Coupled with Wu-Ming's probing, Wu-Ming was now very sure that Berserker was Lancelot. I didn't expect to meet you here, Lancelot. How sad. Wu-Ming slowly placed the 18 rune stones around Lancelot and chatted with him. Leia. Lancelot screamed miserably. I know you have a lot to say to me, but let's wait until next time. Compared to Berserker, I think Saber is more suitable for you. After placing the 18 Loon runes on the stones, Wu-Ming turned around and left. At this moment, Lancelot seemed to have calmed down. He stiffly performed a knight salute to Wu-Ming. Octagon, a magic spell that was comparable to a city's noble phantasm, was released. In an instant, a violent explosion came from behind Wu-Ming. The flames and smoke of the explosion were more than 10 meters high, but did not burn Wu-Ming and the others at all. Goodbye, Lancelot. Chapter 345. The flames raged and burned the entire city of London. After Berserker left, Wu-Ming deactivated the inherent barrier. Everyone returned to the burning city of Winterwood. Hey, can you hear me? That's great. The device here suddenly showed a large amount of magic, and I couldn't contact you guys. That scared me. Thank goodness you guys are fine. As soon as they returned to Winterwood, Gadatsi's wrist glowed, and a virtual screen appeared in front of everyone. On the screen was the face of a kind and dispirited young man. He had the aura of a loser. Is this the magician who made the sound? What a loser. That's right. I thought a magician who can use a remote screen like this would be more reliable. How disgusting. Stheno and Euryale looked at the young man on the screen with disdain. What's going on? Wait, what's going on? The young man was frustrated at first, but then he realized that the two followers of the goddess in front of him were enemies. Aha! Anyway, they're not enemies now. Roman, don't worry about it. Gadotsi smiled awkwardly. I'll explain the situation to you later, Dr. Roman, Matthew said to the young man seriously. Is that so? Well, it's good that you guys are fine. Just now, when I suddenly couldn't contact you guys, everyone was worried sick. The doctor called Roman began to spread the dispirited atmosphere as he constantly complained and complained. Yes, I know, Dr. Roman. Gadotsi answered Roman helplessly. Matthew noticed that Wooming, the main person who solved the crisis, did not say anything. He was frowning as if he was thinking about something. Mr. Assassin, are you all right? Matthew asked worriedly. Gadotsi, who was talking to Roman, also looked at Wooming. That's right. Mr. Assassin helped us. Please let us know if you have any problems. Gadotsi smiled innocently and looked at Wooming, who was standing behind Stheno and Euryale. Wooming shook his head. I'm fine. I just want to ask you guys something. Ask us? Gadotsi and Matthew looked at each other in confusion. Oh, I need to pick up my master. I'll come back later. Wooming did not wait for them to respond and turned around to leave. By the way, there shouldn't be any danger around here, but a sudden intrusion like just now. You guys should be careful. I'll be back soon. After that, Wooming disappeared. Lixian Mashu, that servant is... Roman asked with a slightly dignified tone. He's the one who helped us subdue the two goddesses, Matthew explained. Also, we met a berserker in Assassin's enchantment. Assassin defeated him easily, Gadotsi said excitedly. Enchantment? I guess that's why we can't contact you. Roman touched his chin and pondered. Then, do you know the real names of the berserker and the assassin who left, and the real names of the two goddesses? Roman's voice became very soft. He looked at Stheno and Euryale carefully. After all, he was a little embarrassed in front of the two goddesses. How dare you talk about the goddesses in front of them, magician who's not here? Stheno was an assassin after all, so he could naturally hear it. My real name is Stheno, and this is my sister, Euryale. Before Gadotsi and the others could react, Stheno said his and Euryale's real names casually. After all, we've been defeated by that man. As goddesses, we're prepared to become his captives. Euryale explained why the two of them had told her their real names without hesitation. She also explained why they were no longer enemies. Is that so? Roman's shoulders drooped helplessly. Gadotsi tried to recall the real names of Wooming and the berserker who was defeated by Wooming. I don't know Mr. Assassin's real name, but as for berserker's real name, I remember Mr. Assassin called him Lancelot. What? Without waiting for Gadotsi to finish, Roman interrupted him in surprise and even gave Gadotsi a fright. Matthew came to Gadotsi's side and shielded Gadotsi with his body. Then, he protested to Roman, Doctor, please keep your voice down. You're scaring the seniors. I'm sorry, but this is shocking news. Roman put his palms together and apologized. Then, his expression turned serious. Matthew and Gadotsi were confused. Judging from your tone, Mr. Assassin called him Lancelot, right? If that's the case, he can't be a nobody. Roman looked at them seriously. Someone who can defeat the Knight of the Lake can't be weak, even if the Knight of the Lake has lost his mind. That assassin is very strong. Doctor, what do you mean? Gadotsi understood. Although you don't know Mr. Assassin's real name, there is no doubt that he can rival the Knights of the Round Table and even surpass them. To be honest, I really don't understand why such a person is Mr. Assassin. Although the Knights of the Round Table have berserker adaptability, I still find it hard to accept. After all, the Knights of the Round Table were noble knights. Even the rebellious knight Mordred didn't do anything that violated the knight's code. The reason why Roman was surprised that Wooming, as an assassin, could defeat Berserker was because assassins were generally weak. Generally, they can only be used to collect information and assassinate their master. Let alone Berserker, even casters sometimes can't defeat them. let alone rider, saber, lancer, and archer with 3 mounts. That was why caster and assassin were known as the weakest among the 7 classes. Caster was also a powerful enemy after the workshop was completed, but assassin didn't have any other advantages, so sometimes assassin was even weaker than caster. But he used assassin to defeat Stheno, who is also an assassin, and even Euryale, who is an archer. After that, he still had the strength to defeat Berserker. It seems that you have encountered a powerful servant. The more Roman analyzed, the brighter Matthew and Gadotzi's eyes became. Stheno and Euryale kept smiling as they watched the 3 of them talking. They didn't interrupt. After all, they knew Wuming's identity, so they wouldn't be too surprised by some things. And according to the various phenomena just now, he can be said to be a very easy person to get along with. If his master agrees, you can cooperate with him to solve the mutation of Singularity F. If he didn't have a master, I would have asked Tachika to sign a contract with him. With him, I won't worry about your safety anymore. Roman looked regretful. That's great. Matthew, I can solve this singularity soon. Gadotzi hugged Matthew happily. Although Roman meant that Matthew couldn't guarantee Gadotzi's safety, Matthew knew that Roman didn't think so much, so he didn't say anything. He just smiled and nodded to Gadotzi. Matthew, Tachika, Fujimaru. Suddenly, a familiar voice came to Gadotzi and others. Chapter 346. Matthew, Tachika, Fujimaru. A familiar voice came, and the 2 couldn't help but look at the source of the voice. Wuming and Olga Marie stood not far away. Wuming didn't do anything, but Olga Marie looked like she had finally found the organization. Of course, she wouldn't admit it. Director, are you still alive? Sure enough, Roman was a rather clumsy person. What do you mean, Roman Aikman? Are you looking forward to my death? Obviously, Roman Aikman was his real name, and Roman was an abbreviation. Olga Marie angrily walked to the virtual screen and stared at Roman. How could that be, Director? It's great that you're okay. Roman tiredly dealt with Olga Marie, feeling rather helpless. Director also successfully came here. That's great. Matthew said happily when he saw that Olga Marie was fine. Olga Marie was a little unnatural when she heard Matthew's words. Wuming felt that Olga Marie was a little resistant to Matthew, or more accurately, she felt guilty. Seems like there's a story. Wuming thought carefully. That's great, Director is also fine. Gadotzi also smiled happily. Ahem. Speaking of which, are you the only 2 here? Where are the others, and why are you sitting in this position? And where is Lev? Olga Marie asked, then looked at Roman on the virtual screen. Wuming, who was behind Olga Marie, slightly raised his eyebrows when he heard this, but quickly returned to normal. Sure enough, Lev is indeed related to this group of people, but it seems they don't know Lev's true identity. Through the behavior of this group of people, Wuming could naturally see their character, and it was obvious that they were not on the same side. As Leviticus, Wuming looked at the male lead on the screen. Only this male lead was something that Wuming couldn't see through. The so-called couldn't see through meant that Roman was like a god and like a human, like a living person and like a dead person. If there's a chance, I still have to meet this person in person. Wuming always had a feeling that Roman was not the culprit behind the burning of Winterwood City, but also the person who couldn't get away from the root cause of the Black Mud. Because of Olga Marie's doubts, Roman didn't notice Wuming's gaze. Currently, except for Tachika Fujimaru, the rest of the 47 masters are trapped in the shell's body and are. Because the explosion was in the center of the control, Roman said regretfully. Wuming couldn't help but laugh. Fortunately, he held it back in time and didn't reveal it. If a mere explosion could kill Lev, Wuming would thank the heavens. Lev, But after hearing this bad news, Olga Marie looked like she couldn't accept it. Through the magical connection between Wuming and Olga Marie, Wuming could clearly sense that Olga Marie's magical power was very unstable. If he had to describe it, it would be like a human after their faith collapsed. But Olga Marie was indeed a famous magician. She quickly calmed down and began to understand the condition of their base through Roman and began to give orders. Wuming wasn't interested in listening to this. He walked over to the Gorgon sisters and Anna's young master, Sakura Madu. Anna was sitting on a small rock with a sleeping Sakura Madu in her arms. Stheno and Euryale were sitting on the left of Anna and Sakura Madu. Wuming walked over, and Stheno spoke first. "You finally have time to talk to me. I thought you had forgotten about me." Stheno narrowed her eyes at Wuming, who was walking over. What a greedy man. Not only did he capture me, but he also captured another me and heartlessly abandoned us. How heartless. Euryale continued Stheno's words and also narrowed her eyes at Wuming. "I wouldn't dare to capture the goddess. I heard that anyone who has anything to do with the gods of Greek mythology doesn't have a good ending." Wuming shrugged and said disinterestedly, "But those are all mortals. If it's you, I don't think you'll suffer," Stheno said cheerfully. Wuming ignored the two of them. He walked to Anna's right and sat down. "Is she asleep?" Wuming looked at Sakura Madu and asked Anna. After all, she was his sister-in-law in another world. He should at least show some concern. Thank you for not killing my sister," Anna replied first. Then, she thanked Wuming softly. By now, Anna's identity had been made known to everyone. She was the youngest sister of the Gorgon sisters. She had devoured two of her sisters and turned into a monster, Medusa. Of course, the current Anna was Medusa's infant body. In other words, she hadn't killed her sisters yet. Although she had made up her mind to kill Stheno and Euryale, it was undoubtedly torture for Anna. Stheno and Euryale loved their sister. Just like how Anna would protect Euryale, Anna also loved her sister deeply. If it weren't for the curse, Medusa wouldn't have devoured her sister to protect her chastity. Even though Stheno and Euryale did it willingly, it was still a torture for Medusa. It was the pain of killing her loved ones. I didn't want to see such a curse. That's why I chose to do it. Wuming looked at Gadotsi and the others as he conversed with Anna. But because of that, I've been on the brink of death, Euryale suddenly interrupted. Jack the Ripper's relic, Mary Ripper, was a curse. There were 3 conditions to trigger the curse: fog, night, and the target is a female. Back then, Wuming had activated the relic during the day. Although Wuming had released the fog, which was the dark fog, and the target, Euryale, was a female, Mary Ripper, which didn't fulfill the 3 conditions, only dealt damage. As Wuming had deliberately held back, and Euryale's skills and the god's core of the goddess helped to block the attack, Euryale didn't die. However, it also caused Euryale to be unable to move. After all, Euryale was indeed injured, and Silent Wonder had placed the pseudo-sky lock on her, which almost caused her to die at Lancelot's hands. Although you came in time to save me, you're the one who caused me to be in danger. Remember to take responsibility, Stheno finished for Euryale. Help me protect my beloved sister, the two of them said in unison. Chapter 347. Wuming raised an eyebrow at Stheno and Euryale's shameless request. You two really know how to take advantage of the situation. Why did he say that? It was because Stheno and Euryale seemed to have been connected when they came into contact with Wuming. They knew Wuming's identity. He was an extremely powerful and majestic legendary dragon from beyond this world, the Dragon of Origin. The two of them knew about the dangers of the Holy Grail War, so they wanted to protect Anna. However, they were unable to protect Anna, so they wanted Anna to kill her and recreate the legend of the Gorgon monster. The appearance of the Gorgon meant that they had the power to protect themselves, but Wuming disrupted their plan. However, through Wuming, Stheno and Euryale found the hope of protecting Anna, so they made the request. Sister. Anna looked at Stheno and Euryale, touched. Although she was already dead, and her safety was no longer a concern, she was still happy to hear that someone cared about her. Sure enough, no matter what, my sister still loves me. Anna thought to herself. However, Stheno and Euryale stood up as if they were interrogating him. They walked to Wuming and looked into his eyes. So what's your answer? The two asked in unison. I didn't want to fight the other servants. My goal is to solve this disaster, Wu Ming said in confusion, which made Stheno and Euryale a little unhappy. However, now is the time for the servants to unite. Of course, I won't abandon Anna, my ally. Wu Ming put his hand on Anna's head. Then, Anna slapped Wu Ming's hand away. Don't touch my head. Anna stared at Wu Ming with her small eyes under the hood. She was especially intimidating. Wu Ming raised his hand that was slapped away by Anna and smiled awkwardly. Stheno and Euryale smiled as well. Of course, they were laughing because Wu Ming was defeated by Anna. Wu Ming looked at his hand in confusion. That shouldn't be. May you and the others like it when I touch their heads. Did my affinity aura lose its effectiveness after becoming an assassin? Wu Ming shook his head and stopped thinking about it. By the way, you two are now someone else's servants, right? Wu Ming looked at Stheno and Euryale. That's right. Our master is a green tall hat man. Stheno nodded. She must have used the Holy Grail to cheat, Euryale said. That's how she was able to summon the 7 servants again. And it doesn't exclude the possibility that he can continue to summon servants. Wu Ming nodded. Stheno was right. After all, Wu Ming did not feel that Lev was a human being. Since he could maintain the contract of 8 servants, including Artoria, he was definitely not an ordinary person. However, it did not exclude the possibility that Lev had placed the contract on Artoria's heart, which was the Holy Grail. You wrapped this chain around me to prevent my master from using the command incantation, right? Euryale raised her small hand. The silver-white chain with golden light decorated her like a priceless accessory. I have one too. Is this a slave's chain? Stheno also raised his wrist and said with a wicked smile. Although it's a simplified version of Enkidu, it's still a divine weapon. It's still effective against gods, Wu Ming explained. Although I wanted to kill you to be safe, I still had some questions to ask you, so I kept you two alive. Now it seems that you two are really a burden, Wu Ming said with disdain. Don't talk about my sister like that. Anna glared at Wu Ming angrily. Her face under the cloak was full of dissatisfaction. Then, Sakura Madu woke up. Wu Ming was able to escape from Anna's glare. Wu Ming even wondered if he would be petrified if Anna glared at him for a while longer. Wu Ming then took out some high-level runestones and sealed Stheno and Euryale's mana. He also added a series of negative buffs to their attacks. Of course, Wu Ming only did this after they agreed. After all, Wu Ming was not a bad person. Cough, cough. Soon, Olga Marie finished giving Roman her orders. Anyway, you will replace me as the commander of Chaldea for now. We'll talk about it after I return, Olga Marie said with an imposing tone as she flipped her hair. Yes, sir. Roman was also affected by Olga Marie's imposing manner. He nodded solemnly. However, Wu Ming shook his head regretfully when he heard Olga Marie's last sentence. After all, Olga Marie was already dead. She can now be considered a heroic spirit. Other humans could enter the heroic spirit palace after death, but Olga Marie would disappear after this crisis was resolved. Moreover, she would truly die. She wouldn't exist in the heroic spirit palace. If possible, I'd better save her. Wu Ming thought to himself. No matter what, Olga Marie was still half a servant to Wu Ming. Even if she had bad intentions at the beginning, Wu Ming now understood Olga Marie. He felt that Olga Marie was still a good person. If he could save her, he should. Are you done with your discussion? Can you answer my question? Wu Ming and the other servants walked towards Olga Marie, Gadatsi, and the others. Stheno and Euryale naturally followed Wu Ming. As for Anna, she followed her sister. This resulted in Olga Marie, Matthew, and Gadatsi standing on one side, while Wu Ming, Stheno, Euryale, Anna, and Anna's master, Sakura Madu, stood on the other side. The situation was slightly serious. Wu Ming had 4 servants on his side, while Olga Marie only had Matthew, a demi-servant. At best, he was a human with the power of a servant, but at worst, he was a half-servant. Looking at the slightly tense scene, Roman on the other side of the screen gulped. What do you want to know? Olga Marie calmly looked at Wu Ming, her nominal servant. Please tell me where you came from and your intentions. I will judge whether you can get our help based on your answers. Wu Ming looked into Olga Marie's eyes. Although with Wu Ming's hearing, he was almost as good as Stheno and the others when they were pooping. Is this why you volunteered to be my servant? Olga Marie couldn't help but ask. That's not the point. The point is the name you called when you were in danger. Leviticus, when she heard the name Lev from Wu Ming's mouth, Olga Marie's eyes suddenly shrank. You know, or no, Rafe. Chapter 348. Then, Wu Ming told them about his exploration of the Yuanzhong mountain, where he met Saber and a man in a green tall hat who called himself Rafe, Lenore Floros. He killed Saber's master and put the Holy Grail into Saber's heart in an unknown way, and according to Rafe, he received the king's order to exterminate the human race. Then, when I wanted to attack Rafe, Saber used the Holy Grail to activate the noble phantasm, and I was blown away. Stheno and the other 7 servants were summoned after I was blown away. Wu Ming's words made Olga Marie, Gadatsi, Matthew, and Roman show an expression of disbelief. That man gave us the order to destroy all the creatures in this city, but I always feel that he wanted to get rid of this man. Stheno looked at Wu Ming, and it was obvious that this man was Wu Ming. In short, I always feel that this Rafe should be the Rafe that you said has been sacrificed. That's why I followed you, Olga Marie. Wu Ming finished and waited quietly. After all, Olga Marie and the others needed time to digest. It's unbelievable. Professor Rafe, actually, Roman on the other side of the screen said with a somewhat dull voice. Professor Rafe gave me a pretty good impression. Gadatsi scratched the back of her head. Well, Professor Rafe is very popular in Chaldea. I didn't expect. Matthew's eyes dimmed. I don't allow you to insult Rafe. Suddenly, Olga Marie roared and interrupted them. Rafe is dead. Even if he is still alive, Rafe would not want to destroy the human race. Although Olga Marie was shocked, she didn't waver because of soundless, one-sided words. Let's not talk about the fact that Rafe was at the center of the explosion in the control room. It's impossible for him to survive. Furthermore, even if Rafe is still alive, he has no reason to destroy human beings like you said, Olga Marie argued. So, I don't believe what you said. I don't think Rafe would do such a thing. In the end, Olga Marie stared at Wu Ming's eyes, quite like an angry little female cat. Wu Ming shook his head with a smile. He knew that this would be the result. When facing danger, her first reaction was to ask Rafe for help. It seemed that Olga Marie really relied on Rafe. People's hearts are unpredictable. Although Rafe is a kind and reliable person in your eyes, you are too dependent on him and ignored his negative side. What if he is pretending? Wu Ming began to preach to Marie. You, Olga Marie, glared at Wu Ming. However, Wu Ming interrupted Olga Marie, who was about to say something. And, weren't you in the center of the explosion center? Wu Ming's words were like a sharp thorn that pierced the hearts of the Chaldeans. Yes, why was the director in the center of the explosion alive? Since there was already an example, it was not unacceptable that Rafe, who was in the center of the explosion, was still alive. Moreover, if the explosion was arranged by Rafe, it's not strange that he is alive. Wu Ming's words were very heavy. This sentence, like a sharper thorn, pierced everyone's heart. Now, Gadatsi and Matthew were completely confused. On the other hand, Roman had a thoughtful look on his face. But Olga Marie still didn't believe and wanted to refute Wu Ming's words. Well, it's also possible that someone pretended to be Rafe, first to frame him, and second to deceive people. Wu Ming's tone was light. He shrugged his shoulders and waved to the crowd. In an instant, the original atmosphere was like a balloon burst by Wu Ming's words. Everything is possible. Ha ha! Wu Ming laughed. The nervous crowd suddenly relaxed. Assassin. Then Olga Marie, who felt like she had been played, was furious again. Ha ha! Looking at the arrogant Olga Marie angry, Wu Ming couldn't help but laugh. Gadatsi, Matthew, and Roman were relieved. Assassin is right. It's also possible that someone used the image of the dead Professor Rafe to do evil. Matthew said righteously. And you still have the task to solve the singularity. And according to Assassin, this singularity was caused by the guy who pretended to be Rafe. Roman continued Matthew's words. Then we are bound to confront the fake. Damn it. How dare he pretend to be Rafe? I must teach him a lesson. Olga Marie also calmed down, but they still talked about the guy who pretended to be Rafe. Then everyone, let's work hard together. Gadotsi clenched her fists and encouraged everyone with a smile. Of course, there's no problem with Assassin. But you, sleepyhead, just don't make trouble. Olga Marie crossed her arms and looked at Gadotsi with disdain. After all, Wuming was still Olga Marie's follower. Even if there were doubts and distrust between the two sides, Olga Marie was relieved that they could talk like this. It's good to be motivated, but usually such a team of heroes will be wiped out in the end. Stheno smiled and looked at Gadotsi and the others. Stheno and Euryale didn't speak before because they knew how to read people's expressions. As for Anna and Sakura Madu, they were the kind of people who didn't talk much. Now that everyone had left the oppressive atmosphere, Stheno couldn't help but mock them. The goddess who has lost her ability to fight should take care of herself. Olga Marie was indeed arrogant and dared to confront the goddess. Director, she's a goddess. Please be a little more polite. Gadotsi whispered in Olga Marie's ear. Miss Stheno too, please calm down. Matthew also tried to calm them down. Seeing how energetic they were, Wuming also calmed down. Wuming didn't think that Rafe Lionel Floros was a fake. Wuming said that someone might be pretending to be Rafe because he wanted to take care of his temporary master's feelings. Rafe's tone, when he introduced himself, didn't sound like an imposter at all. Wuming used his omnipotent senses to confirm that this was the real Rafe and not an imposter. After all, sometimes mentality and momentum were the key to victory. So, it's time to answer my question. Wuming suddenly asked. Everyone just remembered that the two sides were supposed to exchange information. That's true. Then, I, who interrogated your master, will tell you. Olga Marie stood up. Chapter 349. Olga Marie briefly explained their situation to Wuming. They came from a research organization called Chaldea in the future. Its full name was Finest Chaldea, or Chaldea for short. In 2015, Chaldea detected that human beings would go extinct in 2016, so they began to study the cause of human extinction. Later, Chaldea's people found a singularity in history under the detection of a near-future observation lens, Sheba. To put it simply, singularities were cancer cells that were formed from irregular history within the regular history. It was a cancer that could endanger the entire history of human beings. This singularity was where Wuming and the others were, the unrecorded winter with City Holy Grail War in 2004. They determined that this singularity was the cancer that would make human beings go extinct in 2016. Therefore, they used Chaldea's device that could send masters through time and space and prepared to send 48 magicians with ray-shift adaptability and master performance to this era to solve this singularity. However, for unknown reasons, when the 47 masters were preparing to be sent, Chaldea was hit by an explosion. Most of the facilities were damaged, and the survivors were less than 20 people except for the 47 frozen masters. The reason why 47 people were frozen was because Gadotsi, the master, dozed off during a meeting and was kicked out by Olga Marie. It had to be said that Gadotsi was really lucky. Then, when Gadotsi wanted to save Matthew, she was trapped in the central control room. Originally a human, Matthew was summoned by Chaldea and bestowed with power when he was on the verge of death. Then the ray shift automatically selected masters, and Gadotsi and her servant, Matthew, were brought to this world. As for the rest, Wuming knew most of it, so Wuming stopped Olga Marie, who still wanted to continue speaking. I understand the general situation. In short, you need to solve this singularity and let history return to the right path, right? Yes, that's true, but what's the matter with your easy voice? Said Olga Marie crossly. After all, the city had summoned 14 servants, and it was very dangerous. My mission is also to protect this world from calamity. Although I'm still an assassin, I'm not that strong, but if there's a chance, I'll change my class. What? Olga Marie, Roman, Gadotsi, and the others were shocked. Even Stheno, Urieli, and the others were shocked. The reason why servants were servants was because their spirit base was fixed and they couldn't change their class. However, Wuming actually said that he wanted to change his class, which undoubtedly surprised everyone. Well, after all, I am special. Wuming smiled. But aren't you breaking the rules? Changing your class and rank. Roman began to mutter. That's only if there's a chance. It's not that easy to change your class. Wuming shrugged. In short, let's leave here first. If we stay in the same place for a long time, it's inevitable that other servants will come to find us. Everyone nodded in agreement. After that, Roman said that if they needed help, they could contact him and then turn off the communication. After all, Chaldea still needed him. Then, Wuming, Olga Marie, Gadotsi, Matthew, Stheno, Urieli, Anna, and Sakura Madu formed a small team and embarked on the path to defeat the great Demon King. Soon, Wuming and the others arrived at the villa where Wuming and Gilgamesh lived. The reason why they came here was because of Stheno's words. The other side has a servant that can kill a god. Are you sure you want to go directly to Yuanzong Mountain? Although Olga Marie and the others had already chosen Yuanzong Mountain as their target, because of Stheno's words, everyone had to follow Wuming. And also because of Wuming's words. I have a super first-class servant with me. In this way, Olga Marie and the others followed Wuming to the villa. In the small villa, Wuming skillfully prepared tea for everyone, and then casually sat down as if it was his own home. It seems that she's not at home. Wuming didn't find Gilgamesh in the house. Thinking about it, Gilgamesh wasn't a person who would stay idle. Perhaps she left after discovering the change. But he didn't rule out the possibility that she went to find him. With the idea of a short rest, Wuming didn't rush to leave with everyone. Gorgon's 3 sisters didn't feel uncomfortable. After all, the 3 of them were goddesses. Sakura Madu was too young to care, and Gadotsi and the others were sitting on the sofa with a slightly strange expression. What's wrong? Wuming naturally saw their doubts, so he directly asked, Is this the house of Assassin's previous master? Matthew asked. Gadotsi and Olga Marie also nodded. After all, Wuming's move was too skillful. It felt like he was the owner of this house. If it was their master's house, it would make sense. No, this house was bought in my name, and I originally didn't have a master. Wuming calmly took a sip of tea and then said, Hey. Gadotsi, Matthew, and Olga Marie immediately yelled. I forgot to tell you this. I came here on my own initiative. If I have to say, my master should be the Great Holy Grail. Wuming calmly took another sip of tea and slowly said, Wait a minute, what's going on? Olga Marie slammed the cup on the table and looked at Wuming like she was looking at an animal. The sound of the teacup being put down scared Gadotsi and Matthew. If the teacup wasn't sturdy enough, the boiling hot tea would have spilled onto Olga Marie's hand. Although I know your identity is not ordinary and can change your class, but can you still show up on your own accord? Wuming calmly took a sip of tea and put down the teacup. He then looked at Olga Marie without any emotion. That's right. Sorry, my identity is not ordinary, so I can do whatever I want. Director, calm down. Gadotsi smiled awkwardly. Then Olga Marie angrily sat on the sofa and then grumbled by herself. She kept muttering, How can you cheat like this? It's really against the rules. By the way, is the companion that assassin mentioned not here? Matthew awkwardly smiled and began to change the topic to discuss the purpose of everyone here. She probably left here to find me. Wuming smiled. Don't worry, it can be said that no one can kill her. Of course, if her stubbornness flares up, the result might be different. Thinking that if Gilgamesh was angered, it meant that he had lost half the battle, especially with Lancer, who had the power to kill gods. If Gilgamesh fought him head-on, he would be at a disadvantage. Let's take a break here. After all, if we plan for the worst, we should still have 6 enemies. Wu Ming looked at everyone seriously. Chapter 350. Whoosh! Wu Ming pulled out a moving blackboard and began to explain the power of both sides. In order to distinguish the 7 servants in my group and the 7 servants summoned by the enemy, now use N and O as the distinguishing words. Wu Ming took out a pointer and knocked on the blackboard. New and old, it feels so perfunctory. Someone complained. Then use black and red. Hearing someone complaining, Wu Ming knocked on the blackboard again and changed his mind. Now, let's talk about the situation. Wu Ming coughed and began his speech. According to Stheno, the new 7 servants defeated the Black Berserker at the beginning, and I defeated the Red Berserker just now. The Berserkers on both sides have already left. Although Hercules had 12 trials in the face of 7 servants, and all of them were not weak, naturally, he could not survive. And the Black Archer, well, I'm familiar with him, so he's an ally. Wu Ming was still thinking about whether to tell them that he was the master of the archer. After all, Wu Ming's hands had been wearing gloves. Gudatsi and others did not find the command seal. After thinking about it, Wu Ming decided not to tell them. In fact, it was just Wu Ming's bad taste, and I know the Black Caster. In the current situation, he will definitely choose to help us. Not counting him, I, Black Archer, Red Assassin Stheno, and Red Archer Euryale, and Black Lancer Anna and Matthew. We already have 6 servants. Wu Ming pointed out the advantages of his side. But the enemy's lineup is not weak. Wu Ming began to point out the weaknesses. First of all, the Black Saber is the famous King Arthur. I don't know the real name of the rider, but the other side has the existence of the undead core. As soon as Wu Ming finished speaking, Olga, Marie, and the others looked worried. King Arthur, undead core. Both of these were very troublesome. Then there's the red team. We don't know the Red Saber's real name. We only know that he's a wretched man. However, to be able to hold the position of Saber, he's definitely not a simple person, Wu Ming said. Everyone nodded. As for Lancer, I think he's the most difficult to deal with right now. According to Stheno's description, Lancer is very likely to be the great hero of India, Karna, Wu Ming said calmly. Karna, Matthew, and Olga Marie were shocked. So that's how it is. No wonder it gave me such a dangerous feeling, Stheno said. If it's the hero who's doing charity, it's indeed very disadvantageous for us, Euryale added. What? Who is Karna? After all, Gudatsi had been an ordinary person before. She didn't know about Hindu mythology, so it was normal that she didn't know about Karna. He's known as the hero who's doing charity. He's a hero in one of the 2 great epics of India, the Mahabharata. He's said to be the son of the sun god Surya, the hero bestowed by the heavens, and the strongest enemy of Arjuna, Olga Marie explained. In the Mahabharata, Karna has a golden armor that's connected to his skin. It was given to him by his father, the sun god Surya, to protect himself. It's basically invulnerable, Wu Ming explained. But his strongest weapon is the god-killing spear that he gave up the golden armor, Matthew said solemnly. God-killing spear? Indra tricked Karna into giving him the golden armor. Out of guilt, he gave Karna the lightning spear that can kill gods. It's undoubtedly a weapon against gods. At full power, no god can defend against it, Wu Ming said nostalgically. Wu Ming had fought Karna before and won. However, there was no doubt that Wu Ming cheated. He was temporarily given the evil noble phantasm by the suppression force. He locked Karna as evil and took advantage of the opportunity to hurt Karna, who had lost his golden armor. If Wu Ming had fought Karna with Sodlek's saber rank, there was no doubt that Wu Ming would have lost. No matter how much Wu Ming disguised himself as Sodlek, Sodlek was still a human general after all. The mystery was different, and he was crushed by Karna. Wu Ming shook his head to stop thinking about it. Especially the servants with divinity. Once Karna releases his noble phantasm, he'll most likely die. Wu Ming's words hit everyone's heart quite hard. What's more, Karna is a brave warrior. His martial arts have reached the peak. Ordinary servants will soon be defeated if they fight against him. Wu Ming looked at everyone and said earnestly, "At least you guys have no chance of winning." This sentence made Matthew and Anna lower their heads. That's right. One of them was a demi-servant, and the other was an immature child. It was indeed difficult for them to fight against Karna, who could kill gods. However, Stheno and Euryale didn't feel depressed. "You're talking about us, not you, right?" Euryale smiled. Hearing Euryale's words, Matthew and Anna raised their heads and looked at Wu Ming. This made Wu Ming feel helpless. "I once met Karna with a different rank, and I was lucky enough to defeat him." This surprised everyone, especially Gadatsi. "That's amazing, Mr. Assassin, but that's when I was in a different rank. If I were to fight Karna with my current assassin rank, I would definitely die." Wu Ming shook his head. "But you can change your rank, right?" "Then change your rank," Olga Marie said casually. The others also looked at Wu Ming in agreement. "I also said that there are conditions to change a rank. It just so happens that I don't meet the conditions at the moment." Wu Ming waved his hand helplessly. "Then, how can we win this hero over? From the Mahabharata, we can see that he is a righteous man." Olga Marie thought for a moment and said quickly, "Impossible." Wu Ming directly denied Olga Marie's words. "Why?" Olga Marie slammed the table unconvinced. "I fought with Karna, and in that battle, I learned about Karna's character." Wu Ming poured himself a cup of tea and took a sip. "He is a servant who completely obeys the master's words. He completely wants to turn himself into a weapon, even though the servant is the master's weapon," Wu Ming said, a little bored. "Oh, then we are definitely going to lose," Gadatsi said, a little depressed. "Senpai." Matthew wanted to comfort Gadatsi, but he didn't know what to say. After all, the enemy was too strong, and they couldn't win him over. "That's why I brought you here, isn't it?" Wu Ming smiled. "Huh?" Chapter 351. "Do you mean that your companion here, the servant, can help us deal with Karna?" Olga Marie was indeed one of the 12 monarchs. Although she was still young, her mind worked quickly. Yes, if she's steady, she can be said to be invincible. Wu Ming smiled slightly. "Then, assassin, can you tell us a real name?" Gadatsi asked curiously. Wait a minute, senpai. It's rude to ask for her real name as soon as we meet," Matthew said nervously. After all, the real name was the secret of every servant. Many times, the weakness of a servant could be known through the real name. Is it that serious?" Gadatsi touched her head. After all, Gadatsi didn't understand these rules, so Wu Ming certainly wouldn't be angry. "Don't worry. Just knowing her real name won't affect her." Wu Ming smiled. "The ancient king, the hero king, Gilgamesh. That's her name." After Wu Ming said this, Olga Marie, Matthew, Stheno, and the others gasped. "The hero king, Gilgamesh?" Gadatsi asked in confusion. "The ancient king who collected almost all the treasures in the world and cut off the connection between gods and humans. That's already the highest level of heroic spirit," Olga Marie said. "I didn't expect that person to be attracted by the Holy Grail War." "How ironic," Stheno said. Wu Ming knew what Stheno was talking about. The ancient king, who had almost all the treasures in the world and supreme power, was reduced to a servant and participated in the dirty magician ceremony. The Holy Grail War was a dirty ceremony, a war that was triggered by the selfishness of magicians using the weapons called servants. War was dirty. Whether it was in the name of righteousness or something else, the essence of war would never change. This was also why Joan of Arc felt that her hands were dirty. Even if the French army was the righteous side in the war between England and France, and even if Joan of Arc had been holding the holy flag on the battlefield and did not kill anyone, she still participated in the war. Because of her filth, she did not refuse the trial, did not argue for herself, and did not feel that it was unfair. She calmly accepted the burning at the stake. Wu Ming shook his head and stopped thinking about Joan of Arc. In short, the hero king, Gilgamesh, is definitely on our side. The direction is good. After Wu Ming finished speaking, everyone's hearts sank. Although they hadn't seen that king, they were sure that he was very reliable. For now, let's stay here for one night. Let's not talk about Olga Marie. Tachika must be very tired. Gadotsi smiled embarrassedly when he heard himself being mentioned. I'm a little tired. Senpai, take good care of your body, Matthew said with concern. Haha, I know, Matthew. Gadotsi responded to Matthew and smiled happily. However, Wu Ming always felt that she was full of emotions. Wait a minute, why exclude me? I'm also very tired. Olga Marie said rather angrily. Well, you're my master. How can you be tired so quickly? Be strong. Wu Ming teased Olga Marie. Damn it, assassin, you bastard. Olga Marie felt that her brain must be abnormal to sign a contract with this guy in front of her. Ha ha. Wu Ming laughed and disappeared in spirit form. I'll go out and investigate the situation first. As for food, there are ingredients in the kitchen refrigerator. You can make it yourself. You can also familiarize yourself with this house and choose a room for yourself. Well, that's it. After that, Wu Ming's aura completely disappeared. Then, forgive me for being rude, Stheno said and stood up. Huh, is the goddess going somewhere? Gadotsi asked in confusion. Of course, to her room. The goddess needs to rest, Uraili replied and stood up with Stheno. Master needs to rest. With that, Anna picked up the quiet Sakura Madu and followed her two sisters. Thank you. When they passed by Gadotsi, Anna's voice came softly. This voice made Gadotsi laugh. What? Aren't you being quite frank? After the three Gorgon sisters left, Olga Marie spoke. Seriously, they're all so willful. Olga Marie complained as she sat on the sofa and angrily drank tea. I feel like the director and assassin are very compatible, Gadotsi suddenly said as she looked at the complaining Olga Marie. What do you mean? I don't want that guy to be compatible. Seriously. Olga Marie glanced at Gadotsi and said calmly. Olga Marie's anger had almost subsided. After all, she got used to being angry. I'll go see what ingredients we have in the fridge. Matthew stood up and bowed to the two before walking to the kitchen. What's wrong with Matthew? Gadotsi asked after Matthew left. You noticed it too? Olga Marie crossed her arms and looked in the direction Matthew left. Yeah, Matthew is giving people the feeling that he has something on his mind. Gadotsi finished and stood up. I'll go take a look. With that, Gadotsi left. Yeah, after all, you're Matthew's master, Olga Marie said calmly as she watched Gadotsi leave. Really? When will my servant care about me? Olga Marie couldn't help but think of the only servant who was willing to contract with her, and the only one who could contract with her. In the kitchen, Matthew began to check the appliances after he found the kitchen. The gas furnace is normal. The electricity and drinking water are still there. That's great, Matthew said happily. After all, if the electricity and water were cut off, it would be terrible. Matthew, suddenly, Gadotsi's voice came from behind Matthew. Hey, senpai, why are you here? Matthew turned around and looked at Gadotsi, who came in. Because I'm a little worried, so I came to see you. Gadotsi smiled. Foo. Foo. At this moment, an unknown white creature that looked like a squirrel, cat, or dog appeared at the entrance of the kitchen while making a foo sound. Ah, it's Fufu. Matthew shouted in surprise. Foo. The little guy called Fufu called out and jumped onto Matthew's shoulder. Fufu's wine glass disappeared when we were running away from Stheno and Uraili. I didn't expect it to find us. Gadotsi was surprised. Of course, senpai. Fufu is very intelligent. Matthew smiled and stroked Fufu while talking to Gadotsi. Fufu, on the other hand, looked very obedient. If Wu Ming was here, he would be surprised. Chapter 352. It's incredible, senpai. Fufu only appeared in front of the two of us. Matthew smiled. Maybe it's a coincidence. Gadotsi shrugged her shoulders. He didn't think about Foe's matter anymore. and Gadotsi told him the purpose of his visit. By the way, Matthew, what are you worried about? Gadotsi's words made Matthew fall into silence. Actually, Senpai, I can't release my noble phantasm, and I don't know the real name of the servant that I possess. Matthew said softly. Is it important that you can't release your noble phantasm and don't know the real name? Matthew is Matthew, and that won't change. Gadotsi instantly held Matthew's hand. Gadotsi, who followed Wuming, Olga, Marie, and the others, already knew the importance of noble phantasm. However, Gadotsi didn't think that Matthew was embarrassed because he couldn't release his noble phantasm. However, Matthew still looked very uncomfortable. I know, with Assassin Senpai, your safety won't be threatened, Matthew said little by little. That's not it. Gadotsi instantly interrupted. Matthew looked at Gadotsi with a stunned expression on his face. Assassin is very strong and reliable, but Assassin is the leader's servant, and the only servant that can protect me is you, Matthew Gillett. Gadotsi grabbed Matthew's shoulders with both hands and looked straight into Matthew's clear eyes. Fufu, who was originally on Matthew's shoulder, had already jumped away. Senpai, Matthew looked at Gadotsi with a somewhat helpless expression, and then he was touched. Since we can't release the relic, we'll ask for Assassin's help when he comes back. I'm sure Assassin will have a solution. Gadotsi encouraged Matthew. But the servant's real name. Why don't we ask Assassin later? Maybe he will know. Gadotsi laughed awkwardly. Really, you need someone else to confirm your servant's true name. Suddenly, Olga Marie's voice sounded. Gadotsi and Matthew turned around and saw Olga Marie at the kitchen door. Really, it's not easy to find a kitchen. Olga Marie complained casually. After all, our house was considered a small villa, and the structure was quite unique. Matthew and Gadotsi were lucky to be able to find them so easily. Sigh. Director, why are you here? Gadotsi's expression changed from embarrassment to confusion. Of course, I don't trust you to buy two. After all, there are only two of you in Chaldea. Olga Marie said impatiently. That, doesn't Assassin count? Matthew raised a small hand and asked like a student. After all, Assassin is a servant with a special identity. Not to mention that he can't follow me back to Chaldea. With Assassin's identity, I don't think the small Chaldea can tolerate him. First, he could summon by himself, and now he could change his class. No matter how you think about it, Wuming was a guy with a super mysterious identity. How could Chaldea tolerate such a hero with a special mission? Moreover, the master can see the attribute value of his servant. In short, because you are too weak, you can't see Matthew's real name. Olga Marie said as she stretched out her hand to Gadotsi and pulled Gadotsi's cheek. It hurts. It hurts. Director, please be gentle. Gadotsi complained incoherently. Humph. In short, as long as you become stronger, you can see Matthew's ability value and his real name. Work hard. Olga Marie snorted and loosened her hand that pulled Gadotsi's cheek. Yes, I know. Gadotsi's eyes were filled with tears as he rubbed his cheeks. Matthew smiled awkwardly. Then, Gadotsi seemed to remember something, so she asked Olga Marie, by the way, Director, do you know Assassin's real name? Gadotsi asked curiously. I'm also very curious about Assassin's real name. Mashu also looked at Olga Marie with a curious look. You two are so annoying. Hurry up and cook for me. Then, with Olga Marie's yelling, Matthew and Gadotsi began to busy themselves in the kitchen. How can I see something like a real name? I don't have master qualifications. If he didn't have such a cheating method, I wouldn't be his master. Olga Marie said lightly while looking at Matthew and Gadotsi busy in the kitchen. And I'm also a fake master. After Matthew and Gadotsi made some simple dishes, Wuming came back. However, Wuming returned with a rather disheveled big blue dog. A big blue dog? Gadotsi said doubtfully. That is a servant. Can't you see it? Olga Marie refuted Gadotsi's words. Really, a servant in front of you can't even detect it. And it's not even an assassin. Olga Marie couldn't help but think. Yo, ladies, the big blue dog greeted Gadotsi and others frivolously. Bang! Wu Ming gave him an elbow hit in an instant. A dash. Hey, I'm injured. Listening to his complaints, Wu Ming glanced at him with disgust. You almost left, so behave yourself, Cuculin. That's right, the big blue dog was Cuculin, who caught Fergus's noble phantasm neon sword. After Wu Ming finished, he threw Cuculin on the sofa. Ha ha, but I have to say hello when I see the ladies. Cuculin was a little hurt, but he still looked frivolous. Cuculin? Is that the hero of the Long March of the Bulls? Sure enough, he looks like a playboy. Olga Marie looked at Cuculin's frivolous appearance and said awkwardly, He's the caster I said would help us, but now it seems that this guy can't even protect himself. Wu Ming spread out his hands. What happened? Gadotsi asked. This guy caught Fergus' noble phantasm. I didn't expect him to survive. Wu Ming held back his laughter and explained to everyone. Fergus? He's Cuculin's adoptive father and friend. Olga Marie was relieved. The neon sword you mentioned, is it the magic sword that can cut off 3 mountains? Yes, that's the sword. The identity of the red saber has been confirmed. It's that old rogue, Wu Ming said with a slightly angry expression. It seems that Assassin and Fergus must have experienced something. Gadotsi and others thought so. Ha ha, it's just that Fergus flirted with Maeve. You still hold a grudge. Cuculin suddenly laughed. Chapter 353. Because Wu Ming used to work for Maeve, he was on the side of Connaught. After the war with Ulster, he ran over and said that he wanted to work for Maeve. Because of Fergus' frivolous words, Wu Ming threw him out. Of course, the process took a lot of effort. After all, Maeve was someone that Wu Ming recognized as his sister. Even if Maeve wanted to fall in love and get married, Wu Ming would never allow an old rogue like Fergus to come. Not to mention that Maeve did not have such thoughts. Maeve, who was obsessed with Wu Ming, did not get married until she died. Instead, she played with men and let them die one by one under her pomegranate skirt. Moreover, they died before they could take advantage of her. Of course, Wu Ming also contributed to this. As a warrior who protected his sister's chastity, Wu Ming naturally shot those who wanted to use force. You said that you didn't want to marry Maeve, and you didn't let her find another man. You even made our 2 countries go to war. I really don't know what you were thinking. Cuculin complained about Wu Ming helplessly. She was already throwing herself at you. Why didn't you want her? It's fine if you don't want her. Don't get in the way of others. Don't get us involved. Back then, for some, reasons, Wu Ming had been protecting Maeve. But after all, Wu Ming was a traveler and had no plans to stay in any place. Then, in order to prevent Wu Ming from leaving, Maeve started the war between Connaught and Ulster. I don't have a choice either. Wu Ming rubbed his forehead. Forget it, forget it. Let's not talk about this. It's all in the past anyway. Cuculin, who hated Maeve, began to change the topic. With the identity of an enemy established, they have an advantage in launching a general attack on us, Wu Ming said. How did you escape? Wu Ming asked Cuculin. Cuculin was not the kind of guy who would throw his life away, even if he knew that he could not win. Come to think of it, it seemed to be true. Cough, cough. Speaking of which, Fergus wouldn't say, I'm going to use my noble phantasm, and so on to let Cuculin escape. Fergus must have judged that Cuculin could not escape, so he released his noble phantasm. Logically speaking, Cuculin should have left. However, Cuculin, who was covered in wounds, smiled. Don't underestimate the Lune Rune, brother. Cuculin smiled. Even so, Cuculin was seriously injured. As the prototype of the Holy Sword, the Demon Sword, I was careless. Wu Ming smiled. The Lune Rune was something that the Norse main god, Odin, had sacrificed an eye in exchange for. How could it be weak? Wu Ming had never used the Lune Rune in battle, so he had neglected the power of the Lune Rune. You are the first disciple of the Master. If the Master knew, you would be finished. Cuculin laughed at Wu Ming. You'd better behave yourself. Who knows when you'll disappear? Wu Ming said. He disappeared in an instant and appeared in front of Cuculin. Once again, he gave Cuculin an elbow strike. I said I was injured. Cuculin rubbed his wound again and complained loudly. So, do you need to make a contract with this master? Wuming said, pointing to Gadotsi. After Cuculin's explanation, his master disappeared in an instant, leaving nothing behind. Wuming guessed that the other black followers were the same. Although the black followers in Winterwood City had lost their master, because of the mutation of the Holy Grail, the black followers without a master could still ensure that they would not be sent back to the Hall of Valhalla through the connection of the Holy Grail. But Fergus's magic sword was not so easy to block, and Cuculin barely survived by relying on the power of the Lune Rune. Hey! Gadotsi saw Wuming pointing at her, and she was a little overwhelmed. That, if Mr. Cuculin is willing, Gadotsi said shyly. Oh, it's a young master. Of course I am willing. Cuculin was instantly excited when he saw that his master was a young girl. Boom! It was the sound of a huge object falling to the ground. Mr. Cuculin, please respect yourself. Matthew stood beside Gadotsi, slammed his huge shield to the ground, and then looked at Cuculin seriously. Fortunately, Matthew did not use too much strength, or the floor would have to be changed again. Wuming thought. Yes, I'm very honest. Cuculin said. Wait a minute. Olga Marie walked in front of Wuming and Cuculin. What's the matter with you two? Olga Marie roared. Olga Marie's understanding of Cuculin had been refreshing since he came in. After all, the conversation between Cuculin and Wuming was very clear. Your real identity is a warrior of Connaught, the silver dragon Sira, who is as famous as Cuculin. Olga Marie looked at Wuming's eyes. Sira? Gadotsi looked at Matthew in confusion. That, senior, it's like this. Matthew took Gadotsi's hand, quietly went to the side, and told Gadotsi about Sira in history. Oh, senior brother, you haven't told him your real name yet. Cuculin, who was sitting on the side, said gloatingly. After all, I'm not Sira now, just a man-killer fiend. Wuming helplessly spread out his hands. Assassin. Jack, is your real name Jack the Ripper? After hearing Wuming's words, Olga Marie guessed Wuming's real name. Fog, London, black clothes and hat, being able to call himself Jack, a pair of female noble phantoms. Olga Marie judged our real name from all this information. Man-killer fiend? Are you kidding me? How could you be a man-killer fiend? Cuculin frowned and asked in confusion. Wuming's senior brother, a great hero, turned into a man-killer fiend, which really damaged his image. Well, this is for the vengeful spirits of those children. I replaced them and became Jack the Ripper. Wuming smiled indifferently. Replace the vengeful spirits, became Jack the Ripper. Olga Marie carefully thought about Wuming's words, savoring the meaning. However, Cuculin didn't understand at once. So that's how it is. As expected of you, it seems that you have experienced a lot in the future. Through Wuming's words, Cuculin immediately guessed why his senior brother became Assassin Jack the Ripper. It was nothing more than absorbing Jack the Ripper's spiritual base, freeing the vengeful spirits that were originally trapped, and becoming Jack the Ripper himself. Anyway, it doesn't matter. Then, Wuming looked at Olga Marie. Sorry, master. At first I want to hide my real name, but later I realized that you might not like this identity, so I always wanted to hide it. What an idiot. Olga Marie said softly. Olga Marie raised her head and looked into Wuming's eyes. You listen to me. You're my follower. No matter what, I won't mind. Looking at Olga Marie's determined eyes, Wuming smiled. What? A frank Olga is not bad. Chapter 354. Then, Wuming was scolded by the arrogant Olga Marie again. Wuming didn't care. After all, he was arrogant. Later, Cuculin and Gadotsi concluded a servant contract. Originally, Cuculin wanted to conclude a temporary servant contract, but because it was not conducive to physical recovery, Wuming forcibly changed Cuculin's mind and concluded a formal contract with Gadotsi. My body has gradually begun to recover. I didn't expect the little girl to have such excellent qualifications as a master. Cuculin felt his physical condition and couldn't help but look at Gadotsi. Of course, this was not a flirtatious look, but a surprise at Gadotsi's potential as a master. Don't underestimate Tachika. She has excellent master qualifications. Patting Cuculin on the shoulder, Wuming smiled. Olga Marie was a little jealous at this time. After all, her master contract with Wuming was a half-finished product that Wuming cheated. However, I still won't be my master. Wuming, who noticed Olga Marie's expression, continued. This made Olga Marie blush again, and Olga Marie glared at Wuming angrily. However, Olga Marie looked very much like an angry kitten. The food is getting cold, let's eat first. In order to avoid embarrassment, Matthew took the lead in changing the topic. Gadotsi and Matthew had already finished cooking and brought the food to the table. Now, they could enjoy it directly. Suddenly, Gouda Z let out a loud cry. By the way, Mr. Assassin, there's one more thing I have to trouble you with. Although Cuculin's previous recklessness made everyone know Wuming's other identity, the Connaught Silver Dragon Wuming still asked everyone to call him Assassin or Jack. After all, he now came with this identity. Is there anything else, Tachika? Wuming asked gently, which made Gadotsi blush. After all, Wuming was really handsome in a black leather jacket and a black top hat. Can you tell Matthew's real name? Or her noble phantasm's real name is fine. Gadotsi knew that her request was a bit difficult, but she still put her hands together and begged Wuming. Tachika, didn't I say, as long as you become stronger, what? Noble phantasm is an instinct. Olga Marie was about to say something, but Cuculin instantly interrupted her. Marie suppressed her anger. She looked at Cuculin's eyes and didn't say anything. Instinct? Mashu pondered over Cuculin's words. Ah, yes, it's instinct. Cuculin spread out his hands. Servant and noble phantasm. These two exist together and are not separated from each other. If you haven't been able to release your noble phantasm, it's probably because your instinct hasn't been activated. With that, Cuculin looked at Gadotsi, revealing a dangerous look and at the same time emitting a murderous aura. Gadotsi was a little puzzled, but Matthew and Olga Marie instantly understood what Cuculin meant. Mashu quickly raised her shield and stood in front of Gouda Z, while Olga Marie looked at Cuculin with a scrutinizing look. Tachika is now your master. Don't think about doing anything dangerous. After all, even if Cuculin was someone Wuming knew, there was no guarantee that he wouldn't do something to hurt them. After all, Olga Marie was a magician, so it was normal for her to have such thoughts. Okay, Cuculin, don't tease them anymore, Wuming said. Well, I'm just livening up the atmosphere. Cuculin smiled and waved his hand, dispelling the murderous aura. Then, I'll leave the noble phantasm and the real name to you. I'm going to rest, brother. After saying goodbye to Wuming, Cuculin's spiritual form disappeared. Wuming shook his head helplessly at Cuculin's character. Don't mind him, he's just like that, Wuming said to Gadotsi and the others. Immediately, Matthew also put down his shield and retreated to Gadotsi's side. So, can you let Matthew use his noble phantasm? Olga Marie asked, sitting on the sofa with her arms crossed in front of her chest and her legs crossed. Let's not talk about this in a hurry. Let me ask you, Matthew, did the servant who lent you his power tell you his real name? Wuming looked at Matthew. No. Matthew was stunned, then shook his head. Really? What was the servant who gave you power thinking? He didn't even tell you his real name and noble phantasm. It's really a headache. Olga Marie covered her head. Generally speaking, a servant's noble phantasm was related to their own life experience. Matthew didn't know the real name of the noble phantasm, so it was normal that he didn't know what the servant was. Wuming smiled. Then Wuming continued to ask, So, when you saw Berserker Lancelot, did you have any reaction? Although Matthew didn't understand Wuming's intention, he still thought about it. When I saw him, I didn't feel anything, but when I knew he was Lancelot, the Knight of the Lake, I was a little angry. Matthew, why are you angry? Gadotsi was a little puzzled. I don't know. Wuming shook his head. So, You mean that the heroic spirit who gave Matthew power has a special relationship with Lancelot? Olga Marie was a first-class magician, and she immediately guessed Wu Ming's intention. That's right. Wu Ming nodded. The reason why he asked Matthew this question was because Wu Ming knew the real name of the servant who gave Matthew power from the beginning. The most noble of the Knights of the Round Table, the Knight of the Holy Grail, Galahad, the Knight of the Holy Grail. That was the real name of the servant who gave Matthew power. For a long time, Matthew had addressed Wu Ming and Gadotsi as seniors, but he didn't use the term senior to address others. He addressed Gadotsi as a senior because the two of them formed a bond in Chaldea, and others addressed Wu Ming as senior by Matthew, meaning that Wu Ming was senior Wu Ming. But in fact, Galahad was the only one who addressed Wu Ming as senior back in Camelot. Because Lancelot admired Wu Ming the most, he told his son Galahad to be particularly polite to Wu Ming. But Wu Ming didn't like the word lord, so Galahad addressed Wu Ming as senior. Although that was one of the reasons, Wu Ming recognized that the power Matthew used was Galahad's because of the shield. The shield was basically the same as the shield that Artoria held during the Round Table Conference, but the details and size were different. Even Bedivere couldn't bear the burden of the Round Table. Only Galahad could. The purest and noblest knight of the Holy Grail, Galahad. Only he could bear the burden of the Round Table. The servant who gave you the power to survive from the brink of death and gave you the power to protect Tachika is named Galahad. Chapter 355. Galahad. Matthew put one hand on his chest and whispered the name softly. Thank you, Assassin Senpai. Matthew bowed to Wu Ming happily to express his gratitude. You don't have to thank me, Matthew. Even without me, you have known Galahad's real name sooner or later. Wu Ming smiled and shook his head. Then, Wu Ming gave Matthew a dodgy. And don't be happy too early. Although I know Galahad's real name, I don't know the real name of his noble phantasm. Why? Gadotsi was puzzled. After all, noble phantasms are obtained after becoming a heroic spirit. Although there are many physical weapons and noble phantasms, most of them are obtained after becoming a heroic spirit. Wu Ming looked at Gadotsi and explained to her. For example, the noble phantasms of Cuchulain, Fergus, and the others were with them when they were alive. Generally speaking, this kind of noble phantasm was the name of the weapon itself. So knowing the name of the weapon would mean knowing the real name of the noble phantasm. However, there were many noble phantasms that had never been seen before in history. The most classic example was the treasured artifact that betrayed the witch Demetrius, Rule Breaker Talisman, Rule Breaker. It was the embodiment of the traitor witch's life, just like her entire life. The Rule Breaker Talisman was also full of betrayal. Although the noble phantasm itself was not as powerful as the knife, it had the ability to nullify all magic. It could completely nullify contracts based on magic or life forms born with magic. Needless to say, this kind of noble phantasm was much more powerful than the Gay Balg, which was a weapon with a physical body. Galahad's noble phantasm appeared after becoming a heroic spirit, so I don't know. Wu Ming finished his explanation. Aren't you special? How can you not see through the noble phantasm of a servant? Olga Marie looked at Wu Ming with some dissatisfaction. Then I'm really sorry. I don't know about this kind of relic that only exists after it has been upgraded. Wu Ming shrugged indifferently. That's a pity. Gadotsi said regretfully. It's okay, Senpai. At least I already know that the servant who gave me power and my benefactor is Galahad. Matthew comforted Gadotsi with a smile on his face. Well, you're right. I've already completed half of it. When I become stronger in the future, I'll be able to find out about Galahad's noble phantasm. Gadotsi said excitedly. At this moment, Olga Marie looked at Wu Ming. You can't get Matthew to use the relic? Wu Ming smiled at Olga Marie's question. I didn't say that I couldn't let Matthew use the relic. I just didn't know the real name of the relic. But, how can you use the relic without knowing its real name? Gadotsi was completely confused. She tilted her head and looked at Wooming with Matthew. Olga Marie, on the other hand, was frowning. Even she couldn't figure out how to use the relic without knowing its real name. Looking at the puzzled crowd, Wooming began to explain about the relic. After the death of various characters, according to their life experience, they were upgraded and also obtained a trump card called the relic. The relic is the trump card of every hero, and to release this trump card, you need to call out the real name of the relic. This is indeed the case. Wooming finished, sat on the sofa, and poured himself a cup of tea. Speaking of which, Gilgamesh's tea was not ordinary. It had been so long, but the tea was still warm. Go on, Olga Marie said impatiently. Okay, don't worry. Wooming took a sip and put the teacup down. The so-called name of the relic is actually just a form. Cuculin also said that the relic is an instinct. Is there a limit to your instinct? If that's the case, it's not an instinct. Wooming spread out his hands. Now, for Matthew, what he lacks is not only the real name of the relic, but also the recognition of the relic. Only then can he unleash the power of this table shield. Wooming almost said the table, but fortunately, he changed his words in time. What did you say in the end? Gadotsi seemed to have heard something different, but she didn't hear it clearly. Ahem, don't worry about the details. At present, we need to give Matthew's shield a real name. This time, it will be easier to release it when needed. Wooming quickly changed the topic. Then, how about Assassin give Matthew a real name for the relic? Gadotsi suggested. This shouldn't be done by me, but by you guys from Chaldea. Wooming said, looking at Gadotsi, Matthew, and Olga Marie. Is it up to us? Gadotsi thought, but she didn't have a clue. Naming something. Gadotsi inexplicably felt that the world was full of malice. Then, when Mashu releases her noble phantasm, how about shouting Lord Chaldeas? Olga Marie suddenly said from the side, Lord, Calds? Matthew carefully thought about the real name of the relic. Well, thank you, Director. Matthew sincerely looked at Olga Marie and thanked her. Olga Marie looked at Matthew's sincere smile and was a little stunned. No, it's nothing. Then, Olga Marie said softly. Without a doubt, Olga Marie was proud again. Great, Matthew, then you can release the relic. Gadotsi hugged Matthew and said happily, but don't be happy too early. At this moment, Wu Ming retorted. After all, if you can't be recognized by the relic and release the relic, then the so-called Lord Chaldeas is a joke. Wu Ming looked at Matthew and Gadotsi seriously. Assassin is right. If Matthew can't release the relic, then the real name I gave you will be wasted. You have to work hard. Olga Marie encouraged. Yes, I will work hard. Matthew nodded excitedly. You too, Tachika Fujimaru. As a master, your self-awareness is really bad. I will train you later. Olga Marie said to Gadotsi sternly. It can't be. Gadotsi's face was filled with worry. For this girl who was just an ordinary person not long ago, special training was like running a few kilometers in military training. Don't talk nonsense. Hurry up and eat. After eating, we will train. Olga Marie pinched Gadotsi's cheek and urged. Senior, you have to work hard. Matthew cheered her on. Yes, Gadotsi said helplessly. Wooming looked at Matthew's figure and couldn't help but think of the pure young man, Galahad. Maybe you didn't tell her your real name to train her. But with me here, your idea may not work. Galahad, well, I will help you train her. Wooming looked out of the window. Although the sky was dark, the future was full of hope. You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.